everyone in attendance. The committee has under consideration the estimates of the Ministry of Community and Social Services for the fiscal year ending March 31st, 2023. I'd ask that we go around the table and have members introduce themselves for the record. Minister, please introduce the officials who are joining you at the table.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, colleagues here. I'm pleased to introduce to my colleagues at the table with me. To my left, Cynthia Farmer, Deputy Minister, Toby Schneider, ADM for Employment and Financial Support Services. To my right, Alan Lovely, ADM for Financial Services and Seniors Financial Officer, and Clay Buchan, ADM for Disability Service Division. In the gallery, I have Tracy Wistick, ADM for Strategic Services, and Marina Kochanina, I apologize if my pronunciation isn't so accurate, ADM for Preventive Community Services. Of course, Robin Cochran, Director of Communication, my own Alan Wong, Chief of Staff, and Robin Anderson, Chief of Staff for Deputy Minister.
Thank you, Minister. My name is Jackie Lovely, and I'm the MLA for the Camrose constituency and the chair of this committee. We'll begin starting to my right with introductions.
Good morning, Grant Hunter, Tabor Warner.
Good morning, Michaela Fry, MLA for Brooks Medicine Hat.
Good morning, Minister and staff. Mark Smith, Drayton Valley, Devon.
Good morning to everyone here. Mickey Amory, Calgary Cross.
Marie Renault, St. Albert, and this is my staff, Mary Ellen Green.
Richard Fian, Edmonton, Rutherford. Good morning.
Good morning. My name is David Egan. I'm the MLA for Evanston Northwest and the acting deputy chair this morning.
Thank you so much. And now we'll go to the members participating remotely. Please proceed.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning again.
Sorry, Minister, we have remote participation. Just two more introductions. Go ahead, please.
Richard Gottfried, MLA, Calgary Fish Creek.
Good morning, Leela here, Chestermere Strathmore.
Thank you so much. I'd also like to note the following substitutions for the record. Mr. Egan is substituting for Mr. Sabir. A few housekeeping items to address before we turn to the business at hand. Please note that the microphones are operated by Hansard. Committee proceedings are being live streamed on the internet and broadcast on Alberta Assembly TV. The audio and video stream and transcripts of meeting can be accessed via the Legislative Assembly website. Members participating remotely are encouraged to have your camera on while speaking and your microphone muted when not speaking. Remote participants who wish to be placed on a speaker's list are asked to email or send a message to the group chat to the committee clerk, and members in the room are asked to please signal to the chair. Please set your cell phones and other devices to silent for the duration of the meeting. Honourable members, the standing orders set out the process for consideration of the main estimates. A total of 3 hours has been scheduled for consideration of the estimates for the Ministry of Community and Social Services. Standing Order 59016 establishes the speaking rotation and speaking times. In brief, the Minister or a member of Executive Council acting on the Minister's behalf will have 10 minutes to address the committee. At the conclusion of the Minister's comments, a 60-minute speaking block for the official opposition begins, followed by a 20-minute speaking block for independent members, if any, and then 20-minute speaking block for the government caucus. Individuals may only speak for up to 10 minutes at a time, but time may be combined between the member and minister. After this rotation of speaking time will then follow the same rotation of the official opposition, independent members, and the government caucus. The member and the minister may each speak once for a maximum of 5 minutes, or these times may be combined, making it a 10-minute block. If members have any questions regarding speaking times or rotation, please feel free to send an email or message to the committee clerk about the process. With the concurrence of the committee, I will call a 5-minute break near the midpoint of the meeting. However, the 3-hour clock will continue to run. Does anyone have any opposition to a break? Hearing none, we will proceed. Ministry officials may be present and at the discretion of the minister may address the committee. Ministry officials seated in the gallery, if called upon, have access to a microphone in the gallery area and are asked to please introduce themselves for the record prior to commenting. Pages are available to deliver notes or other materials between the gallery and the table. Attendees in the gallery may not approach the table. Space permitting, opposition caucus staff may sit at the table to assist their members. However, members have priority to sit at the table at all times. If debate is exhausted prior to 3 hours, the ministry's estimates are deemed to have been considered for the time allotted in the schedule and the committee will adjourn. Points of order will be dealt with as they rise, and individual speaking times will be paused. However, the speaking block time and the 3-hour meeting clock will continue to run. Any written material provided in response to questions raised during the main estimates should be tabled by the minister in the Assembly for the benefit of all members. The vote on the estimates and any amendments will occur in Committee of Supply on March 21st, 2022. Amendments must be in writing and approved by Parliamentary Council prior to the meeting at which they are to be moved. The original amendment is to be deposited with the committee clerk with 20 hard copies. An electronic version of the signed original should be provided to the committee clerk for distribution to committee members. Finally, the committee should have the opportunity to hear both questions and answers without interruption during estimate debate. Debate flows through the chair at all times, including instances when speaking time is shared between a member and the minister. I'd like to now invite the Minister of Community and Social Services to begin his opening remarks. Sir, you have 10 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning, colleagues. Again, I'm pleased to be here to provide an overview of Community and Social Services budget. Community and Social Services has always been the social safety net for vulnerable Albertans. And in Budget 2022, we're maintaining core funding to the important program people rely on for these purposes. This includes income support, ACE, and many others. In addition, we're providing critical increases to priority areas like employment support. And most importantly, we'll help vulnerable Albertans and Albertans with disabilities get the skills they need to find jobs and increase their independence. Budget 2022 is moving Alberta forward by strengthening our healthcare system, getting more Albertans working, and bringing our finances back into the black. As part of our Alberta Recovery Plan, we're aligning all our supports under the Alberta at Work initiative to help Albertans find jobs and employers find workers. But we also provide critical increases to key programs, including ACE, disability services, and career and employment services. Let's talk about the ACE first. In fact, additional $12 million added to ACE budget to a total of $1.7 billion. Once again, this is the largest ACE budget in Alberta history, and which also enabled the monthly benefit of $16.85 remain the highest in the country. With that, 72,000 Albertans are able to enjoy the support that we provided to maintain their independence and their living with dignity. And also, at the same time, we're also improving the ACE process. As part of this effort, we have developed an online application process which will provide a more personalized and improved user experience for applicants. By streamlining the application process, it also enabled the staff to have more time to focus on working with people instead of the paperwork. This includes having more time to connect applicants to the right services and the support that can make their needs met. Let me share something related to the employment and income support program here. With this budget, we have $816 million committed for employment and income support budget. During pandemic, federal relief program has led to a lower than expected application to income support program. Now that with those federal program coming to an end, we're seeing more Albertans coming back to our provincial income support program. We're accounting for this rise in caseload in budget 2022. The next part is a career employment services components in the budget. Folks, a strong economy means that more opportunity for employment. That's why we're increasing funding to help more Albertans access the resources they need to find jobs. That means fewer Albertans will rely on the income support program. It is more important than ever at this time that anyone who wants to work is able to do so. And that's why in the investment of additional $34 million for career and employment services is so critical as reflected in this budget. $20 million of this funding is part of the government's new initiative called Alberta at Work. Through more practical training like first aid and covering the cost of equipment needs and transportation and other needs, we will help more Albertans get back to work. In addition, $14 million from this budget will be there to leverage the federal funding for employment and career services. Last year, as a whole, more than 32,000 Albertans gained independence and were able to leave income support program as a result of such employment support services there. Next, I would like to share with you a budget related to disability services. We're continuing to support people with disabilities who are looking to live and work as independently as possible to help ensure persons with disabilities and family support for children with disabilities. We continue to support inclusion, well-being, and employment for Albertans. Budget 2022 provides an increase of $60.8 million over 2021 for a total of $1.4 billion in this area. Through this year's investment, we will support an average of 16,500 children with disabilities and their families per month, and additional 13,000 adults with developmental disabilities. This government knows when we support Albertans with disabilities and their families, we also support inclusive communities where everyone has a chance to survive and succeed. We're empowering vulnerable Albertans to reach their full potential through employment. Next part is related to homeless and outreach support services. As we work to get Albertans back to work, we also will continue to support some of the most vulnerable people in our province. This includes people who have nowhere to stay, remain homelessness. Budget 2022 maintains overall funding for shelters and community organizations, ensuring homeless Albertans are safe and supported. In addition, Budget 2022 maintains funding for home and outreach support, which includes supportive housing, intensive case management, rapid rehousing, and outreach support. Recognizing that homelessness is a growing concern for many communities, we have also established a task force to look at this issue and how it's impacting community large and small, and how we can tackle that from a structural difference in terms of having innovative services in place. Next part is related to domestic and sexual violence. Alberta government is committed to addressing domestic and sexual violence and ensuring survivors get the help they need. Funding is maintained for women's shelter in Budget 2022, including 30 women's emergency shelter and 16 shelters that provide long-term housing and support. We're also keeping our promises to survivors of sexual assault by increasing funding for sexual assault services in the amount of $1.2 million, completing the platform commitment to increase funding by $3.5 million within our term. This additional funding will go towards police and court support for survivors and regional expansion of services. Next, let me share with you a budget related to family and community safety part. Our government support for civil society organizations by increasing the stability of the sector and helping Albertans participate and with inclusion and fairness in our province. Funding for community support and family safety is budgeted at $137.6 million. That includes $100 million for family and community support services, commonly known as FCSS. Another is $13.8 million for sexual assault centers, $5.3 million for family violence prevention, including bullying, $6 additional million for civil society fund, and $9 million for low-income transit pass program with Edmonton and Calgary. Looking forward, Budget 2022 is a well thought out and responsible plan that will get Albertans back to work and ensuring services are getting to the people who needed them the most. Alberta government has been there for Albertans throughout the pandemic, and we want to be there for Albertans during Alberta's economic recovery. Budget 2022 allows Alberta's Ministry of Community Services to keep working alongside community partners to provide those support and opportunities. Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the committee. Now I'm ready for questions.
Right. Well, thank you so much, Minister. For the next 60 minutes, members of the official opposition and the Minister may speak. Honourable members, you will be able to see the timer for the speaking block in the committee room and on Microsoft Teams. So you can see it on the screen there. And members, would you like to combine your time with the Minister's?
Sure.
Minister, what's your preference?
In order to ensure you have enough time to get all your questions out, I would go with rotation. So give you a full 10 minutes so I can hear you out.
Sure. All right. Well, proceed, please, member.
Okay, thank you. So before I get started, I just wanted to do a quick land acknowledgement that we are on Treaty 6 land. I want to acknowledge the Métis people of Alberta as well. I also want to thank all of the frontline CSS staff and everyone here today. I know it's been an extraordinarily difficult year, and so I'm very grateful for all of the work that is done. I also wanted to know, I'm not sure, maybe I can't see it, there is no American Sign Language that I can see. I don't know, has that been taken care of? So for the last 2 years, I've written letters, asked for ASL translation to be here for budget estimates for CSS. I don't see it. I didn't write the letter. I was assuming the ministry could take it from here. Guess that didn't happen. That's unfortunate. So the problem with block time, and I'm just going to put this on the record, and it's fine, I don't have a problem doing this, I was expecting it. The problem is there is less accountability, which this government's known for, is that they're able to pick and choose which questions to answer. So we will be watching Hansard After, as I hope everybody at home will as well. I will endeavor to ask all my questions. I hope there will be answers in good faith. So let's talk about AISH. In 2019, the Notley government did something that was actually a game changer for disabled, vulnerable, and low-income Albertans. And what that was indexing benefits. That was indexing AISH, income support, and seniors benefits to inflation. What that did was remove some of the need for people to have to advocate and beg for increases every single year, and once again demonstrate why living in poverty is not a good idea. And so I was incredibly grateful to see that. Not only that, but we caught people up with an additional $100 that covered the 3 years where benefits weren't indexed under the Notley government. One of the first things the UCP did when they came to power was stop that. So we know several years later, we see people falling further and further into poverty. And, I know I am tired, I know my colleagues are tired of having to give examples to this government about the damage that has been done. Now, I can see in the budget estimates, there's likely a plan to index benefits before the election next year. And, that's incredibly sad that with the kind of surplus that this government's crowing about, that they didn't have the courage to do it right now and take care of the grinding poverty that is everywhere.
Honourable member, the questions need to flow through the chair.
I am talking about indexing AISH benefits, which are in budget estimates.
Yes, but please address the comments through the chair.
Okay. So I'm going to give you an example. One of the things that has really bothered me is the comment made by this minister a little bit earlier, and that was that AISH benefits are the most generous in the country. That is incorrect. Now, some of your language was correct when you said it was the most generous.
The conversation needs to flow through the chair, please. And I do have a point of order. Please proceed.
I refer to 23B, speaks to matters other than the question under discussion. If the member wants to question the minister, then perhaps she could refer to a specific budget line or something in the fiscal plan that will actually tie what she's saying to the matters under discussion.
Please proceed.
Yes, no, I think that she was well within her purview in asking. I would suggest that the minister's choice to go with 10-minute blocks creates a space by which we have to work in. And so if you just have 10 minutes worth of questions without context in a 10-minute block, then it just loses all significance. And so I think that the point of order is not valid, and I suggest that we proceed.
I've made my ruling. Members, the reason that we're here is for main estimates. And I think you all probably heard me at the beginning of the meeting when I said that I would like to call the meeting to order and welcome everyone in attendance. This committee has under consideration the estimates of the Ministry of Community and Social Services for the fiscal year ending March 31st, 2023. So that's how I opened the meeting, and that's going to be the purpose of our discussion. So, member, your time is ticking. It's 6 minutes and 46 seconds, so please proceed with your questions.
Okay, so we're talking about AISH benefits. So if you look on page 52 of budget estimates, it's pretty clear. Okay, yeah, let's get to the point. So we're talking about AISH benefits, Madam Chair, that the minister noted in his opening statements, we're the most generous in the country. That's what I'm addressing. That's what I'm talking about right now. So here's my comment about that. So we're at $1,685 a month. That's what people are living on. Now, we know that there is a low-income measure in Canada that's just over $24,000 a year. Low-income measure, for example, in Edmonton, just over $21,000 a year. Now, keep in mind, a one-bedroom apartment is like about $1,000. So inflation is nearing 5%. We know that people just are unable to manage. So we've got oil prices at almost $100 a barrel right now. Got a balanced budget and a surplus. We know food bank usage is up. Food Bank Canada Hunger Count 2021 shows us that it's up 20% nationally. Disabled Albertans are struggling and falling further behind every single year. Consumer Price Index is 3.2%. I don't think there's anyone in this room that hasn't noticed the price of food. When you go grocery shopping, it's higher. So here's my question, Minister. When you and your government chose to de-indexation income support benefits in 2019, citing numerous misrepresentations and economic conditions as the rationale, no information was given to Albertans about what conditions would need to be evident for these benefits to be re-indexed to inflation. So my question, what will it take for the UCP to reverse cuts to AISH and income support, tie them again to inflation this year, this budget? Next question. AISH was increased in 2022-23 budget estimates by $9.3 million, which is just under 1% over the 21-22 budget amount. So the CSS annual report 2020-21, that is the last annual report, on page 35 states that the 2019-20 average annual AISH caseload growth was 6.2%. Before that, the average annual caseload growth was 6.3%. Certainly, AISH caseloads were temporarily impacted by COVID in the last fiscal, and by the looks of it, this government is projecting COVID will also impact this fiscal year. So, how did the government arrive at less than 1% increase to AISH, given the current situation and the government's own data and the projected population growth of 1.4% that is clearly in your budget documents? Is this government planning on altering any aspect of AISH eligibility in fiscal 22-23? My next questions. What is the total number of new applicants for AISH this year, in this fiscal that we're covering? And how many were successful? How many AISH appeals were conducted in this fiscal year? And how many decisions were overturned as a result of those AISH appeals? What was the average time in fiscal 21-22 between the Secretariat, the Appeals Secretariat, receiving the request for appeal from the AISH applicant and the receipt of the administrative review or review of decision from the AISH Director? After you answer that question, I would like to know, what is an acceptable timeline? What is an acceptable amount of time between filing an appeal and having the hearing? What is the benchmark that this ministry is using? Having a hearing, and what is the timeline? What is an acceptable timeline for this ministry between having the hearing, the completion of the hearing, and the appellant having the decision in their hand? And what is an acceptable time frame between getting the decision and then the first payment? In AISH language, I believe that's commencement of benefits. So we have about 2 minutes. So I'm going to move on to more specific questions about the Appeals Secretariat. And Madam Chair, for your information, that is line item 1.5 on page 52 of budget estimates. So we see that the panels are budgeted to spend another $3.6 million, about the same as last year, same as the budget and forecast for 21-22. Now, what I would have liked to do, but I don't have time, is I would very much like to read some examples of what goes on in an appeal hearing in AISH, because I think most people sitting at this table would be stunned. I don't have time to do that. I hope to have time to do that in the legislature, because I think it's really important to have context. We talk about numbers of people, percentages, and millions and billions of dollars, but what we forget is that these are individual people that have individual stories that are actually most of the time quite heartbreaking. And so I think it's really important to remember that. So anyway, these are my questions related to line 1.5 of the Appeals Secretariat. So I would like to know how many FTEs are included in this line item. What is the total fiscal or financial amount or financial commitment? Are any of those FTEs shared with any other ministry departments? If yes, what is the time allocation and what department? What is the difference between last year's number of FTEs in the Appeals Secretariat and this year? My next question. The Asian Income Support Appeals are quasi-judicial hearings that operate within strict, confusing, and hard-to-follow rules for non-disabled people. Now, I don't have the kind of disability that would lead me to apply for AISH benefits, and I still have trouble following the AISH appeal process. I have seen all of the documentation that goes out to people. I have watched the process, and I've been a participant, actually an observer in AISH appeals. And I can tell you that I felt humiliated for the person going through the appeal with the type of questions, what was required, with the lack of information, the lack of support that was provided, the lack of accommodation, and I think it's astounding that in 2022, appellants are not supported more than they are, and I would like that to be on the record. So I would like to know from this ministry, what do you feel is an appropriate, what are appropriate accommodations for appellants that go through this process? And other than offering them larger print or captioning, I would like to know what other accommodations are made available to appellants, what supports, what personal supports or legal supports, as this is a quasi-judicial hearing, what supports are made available to people that feel the need to appeal.
That's our time. Thank you so much, Honourable Member. And I'm just going to pause there, Minister, before you proceed. And I'll address some of the points that the member had asked about. Member, you had asked about ASL, American Sign Language, being in the room, and it's something that the Speaker's office has arranged to happen in the chamber. They have been doing trials with public accounts, but it's not something that's been arranged, but would be requested through the Speaker's office. And perhaps if that's something that you would like to do for future, you could arrange that with the Speaker's office if that's something that's important. Also, I just wanted to address one more item. Member Egan, you had said across the table you're going to regret that. I will not permit unparliamentary language to happen or unparliamentary behavior in the room. So let's please be on our best behavior. We want to have a good dialogue and a good discussion with everyone. So thank you so much. And now I'd like to turn this time over to the Minister for his response to the Honourable Member's questions.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Honourable Member, for asking a lot of, I'd say, good questions. I'm happy to take my time to address one after another. Let me begin by answering a question about the AISH index. You were questioning about 1685 monthly AISH benefits being the highest in the country. Let me tell you, the fact is a fact. When you comparing all those cost of living numbers, you also need to comparing the same numbers in other jurisdictions, how that look like. I don't need to go too far because anybody who can Google there, if you live in Toronto, Ontario, your average house value there is more than double what Alberta today is. When you talk about anything else, inflation, it goes across the whole country. But let me put it this way. Fact is a fact. The $1.37 billion AISH budget in Alberta is the highest in our history, and the 1685 monthly AISH benefit is the highest in the country. So that's the fact. It doesn't matter how you want to spin around the numbers. I think facts speak on its own, that part. So the other part I want to be very abundant clear is when we provided those high amount of benefits, maintained what we call the critical core program for ensure our social safety net, we did it at a time of economic adversity with unforeseen health crisis like pandemic. We did so with discipline. I want to remind members that you probably recall at the time when we assumed government, the first thing we did is take a look at our spending, starting from Premier, myself. Premier took a voluntary 10% cut. All the MLAs, including myself and all of you, all of the members, took a 5% cut. With that in mind, we negotiated with our partners, whether it's the doctors, the nurses, and others, in good faith. And I must say that in the end, agreement has been reached, and the reasonable increases has been accepted by all. I want to take this opportunity to thank all our partners and thank all of you and thank all of public service that come to the same table, that we need to show our discipline and responsibility. It is with that in place, plus our rapidly changed environment that created business-friendly environment that invite investors come back to Alberta. I can give you a number that has been shared many times in the House, but I'll repeat it here again. Venture capital investment alone in 2018 was $118 million. And by the time of last year, 2021, it's 5 times of that with our changed government here. So what I'm trying to show you the picture is, in one hand, we stay disciplined with expenses. In the other hand, we grow our economy rapidly. But at the same time, we maintained highest age benefits for most vulnerable in the country. So that shows a responsible government. So I hope that answers your question for age. I'll move on to the next one. Caseload growth. We inherited from the previous NDP government. The number again will show in our financial details there. You'll see that the caseload growth from 2015 to 2019 is at 30%. This occurs when our economy is tanking, when the net population growth in the province is in negative term, yet the caseload growth here is 30%. You can see with anybody with common sense, this is unsustainable. You cannot continue with that strategy, with that trajectory. But since we took government, we take a responsible approach on this. We introduced a measure that we call addressing most urgent and critical case. Okay. So our effort is we want to be there to make connections to folks, and the caseworker be in touch with families so that we can get what we call service in planning. So we can hear out what are the most important critical issues there, ensuring that people are safe and issues that are most critical get addressed. With age, because it's a statutory benefit, we don't dictate who gets what. The amount is set by legislation. So everyone who is eligible for age will receive it. So there's no question about that part. In terms of the age process, the time it's taking, as many of you know, that age has a criteria that not only verifying your disability, but also need other professionals like doctors to do assessment to conclude with such. So that takes time. Most of the time, what that takes is from people collecting the relevant material and report and submit that to the system, and then we have our own system to assess that and make a decision based on information available. So depending on how quick that turnaround is, so the time varies from case A to case B. The other part, okay, one notable commitment I'm pleased to share with you is if you look at our business plan on page 21, we have set a measurable outcome that we can see the difference we're making. For 2022 to 23, the average time taking for age processing, we targeted for second. So for, just give you some comparison here. In 2018 to 2019, average times takes to process age is 28.2 weeks. In 2019 to 20, that average dropped to 27.7 weeks. So to today, as we speak, that drops to 25.6 weeks. And our target for 21-22 is 24.2 week. The other part I want to answer this question, but also related to your other question, you talk about the appellant, the appeal process, how long does it take, all that stuff. I want to share with you that we noted the time taking in appeal taking so long. Part of the reason is new evidence being introduced as the appeal process being heard. So we made, because of that reason, you can imagine if new evidence being introduced in the process, it become a endless loop. That certainly did not help to make the decision quicker that way. Because of that reason, we made a ministerial policy change that we eliminated introducing new evidence in that level. If new information brought in, it brings back right to the right to the administrative review process, rather than the appellant process. Anyway, by improving that, we're also setting up new targets so that the performance measures in the future will be significantly improved. For further details, I would like to invite my ADM, Tracy, to answer further details of the time. Sorry? Oh, 30 seconds round. Okay, maybe I'll pass that. Okay, thank you. And then let's get on to other questions you have here. We talk about caseload growth. We talk about how we manage that. We talk about setting up a new target for that. We talk about the appeal process. I'm running out of time on my own time right here.
2 seconds left. That's it now. Thank you so much, Minister. Appreciate that. And now we're going to head back over to the honourable member.
Thank you. So I'm just going to get started, clean up a few things. Didn't actually answer any of my questions about the timing. I wasn't talking about performance metrics, about the time it takes to review an ACE appeal or an ACE application. I was talking about appeals. So, Madam Chair, if I'm not
stop right there, please, honourable member.
Incredibly
Please
frustrating.
respect the role of the chair.
Madam
When
Chair.
I'm speaking, please do not talk over me. Let's be respectful of one another in this room, please.
Yeah, let's. Okay.
Honourable
So-
member, please.
Really?
Please respect the role of the chair.
Madam Chair, I am following up on the question.
Honourable member, please be respectful of the chair. When I'm speaking, please do not talk over me. I wish to have a nice discussion today. Please proceed with your questions.
Thank you. So to follow up, you're incorrect about the benefits across the country. Benefits for disabled people are higher in Northwest Territories than the Yukon. Look it up. So I'm talking, I understand AISH benefits are legislated, but the problem with this block is that you are choosing, the minister is choosing, Madam Chair, not to answer my questions. And so I'm going to continue, but I would really like it if you would focus on the questions that I'm asking and try to answer those. So I'm going to go back to the AISH appeals. I would like to talk about the diversity of appeal appointments. So the people that are appointed by the minister to sit and listen to the appeals. I would like to know what kind of work was undertaken by the ministry to ensure diversity and equity of representation. Are there any people with lived experience as it relates to disability on those appeal panels? I would like an answer to that. So currently appeals, as my understanding, are being scheduled into August. They are still virtual. And the scheduling turnaround used to be 60 days. So I would like the ministry to explain that to me, why it is taking so long, and what is the plan to address the appeal backlog. Now, the minister mentioned a couple things about ministerial orders. I'm not sure how that addresses ministerial or the backlog of appeals, but I'd like to hear that. I don't see any increase in the budget, so I'm assuming that's going to happen within the ministry. I look forward to getting some details. Then I would like to know what is when in the process is the commencement of benefits. Now, this is really important. Commencement of benefits is a lot, actually hinges on that for people that have gone through this process. So when in the process, from the time that either they're approved or they go through appeal and the decision is overturned, when is the commencement of benefit determined, and who exactly in that process determines what the date is for the commencement of benefits? What is the criteria? And if you can reference any policies or regulations that guide this, I would appreciate it. And how many appeals occurred in the last fiscal year? So how many appeals in 2020-21, which is what we're looking at? So I'd like to talk a little bit about AISH and income support clawbacks. For those of you that don't know what that is, it's just a term, or I think the department calls it overpayments. But what I mean is that, let's say I'm an AISH recipient and my husband, his income is calculated when my benefits are determined. Let's say something changes for my husband, he gets more income, I get less AISH. Then there becomes a situation of an overpayment or a clawback. So after cutting core benefits during a global pandemic, while inflation is nearing 5%, the UCP chose to make life harder by clawing back benefits. For example, actually I'm going to skip my example because I'm running out of time, and I sort of gave you one anyway. So that's what I'm talking about, is clawback or overpayment. So how many AISH recipients had their AISH benefits reduced because of federal supports, including employment insurance, as a result of COVID-19? What was the total value of the savings in fiscal 21-22? So my next question, how many AISH recipients had their AISH benefits reduced as a result of changes to spousal income related to COVID? How many appeals for accommodation benefits? Now, if you'll recall, over the last, actually it's been more than a year now, this government has systematically reduced supplemental benefits. So income support for a single Albertan is under $900. Obviously, nobody can live on that, right? You can't afford to live on that. So there were other pieces that allowed people to live on it. One of those was accommodation, or I can't remember what it was called, shelter benefit. It was an extra just over $300 that would actually help people sort of manage on income support. Over the last year plus, people have been kicked off there. So government will tell you, oh no, it was a change in policy, was never meant to be permanent, we have to review it every 3 months, or whatever they're going to say. The end result is we know that almost 2,700 people were kicked off that benefit, lost over $300. My question, how many appeals occurred in this fiscal that we're covering? How many appeals for accommodation benefits? How many of the decisions were overturned? Now, you may not answer that, but I happen to know that.
Honorable member, I have warned you to direct the conversation through the chair.
So, okay,
please respect my wishes and honor the role of the chair.
So I would like to know how many of those appeals were overturned. I happen to think 100% of them were overturned, but I'd like the ministry to confirm that. So, my next question, how many people left AISH roles? So we talked about how many people were added to AISH. So how many people left AISH roles for the following reasons? So you might want to write these down because there's a few of them. How many left for death? So for whatever reason, natural death, disability related. How many people no longer receive AISH benefits because they died as a result of COVID-19? How many left AISH as a result of turning 65? How many left AISH as a result of full-time employment or moving past the level of, I guess, acceptable earnings? And how many people moved out of the province? How many people lost AISH benefits because of a reconsideration or a review? And what was the total number of people that left AISH roles? So all of these people, what was the total number of people that left AISH? How many AISH applicants were denied benefits in the last fiscal year? And finally, how many appeals, actually, I'm going to skip that last question. So there are a number of questions there, and I've got about 4 minutes left. So I'm going to move on to another topic, which is FTEs in community and social services. So, Madam Chair, for your information, it's in the budget documents, I can't recall it, in the fiscal plan moving forward, where they talk about reductions in FTEs. So, for a ministry with about $4 billion in spending, these are huge programs, huge front-facing programs that impact people's lives. So we know that includes things like AISH, income support. Now, none of this work is done without the hundreds and hundreds and I would say thousands of frontline staff that are doing this work. But since the UCP formed government in 2019, they have collectively cut, now this includes the amount that is projected to be cut in this budget, they have collectively cut 514 full-time equivalent jobs. That is 16% reduction in the workforce, 16%. This is a growing ministry, as you'll hear. So you heard the minister earlier, Madam Chair, say, AISH is the highest it's ever been. Well, of course it is, Madam Chair. You know that, because we heard the minister say there's over 70,000 people on AISH, and that's the highest number of people on AISH we've ever had as a province. So naturally, it makes sense. So would there have been, and keep in mind, this number would have been quite a bit higher had they not stopped the move to privatize direct operations. So UCP is on track to cut another 102 jobs. So I would like to know very specifically, where are these jobs coming from? Was there any risk assessment whatsoever completed in any programming area whatsoever to determine if removing these positions would have any negative impacts on services? And the reason I'm asking that is that I think that the ministry staff are well aware, as am I, Madam Chair, that there have been ongoing workload assessment models assessments done. So in a number of different programming areas. So I was informed that the workload assessments have been ongoing, and I would like to focus specifically on the AISH program assessment. So as you know, Madam Chair, there are a number of service regions in the province. For example, yours, Camrose, is the central region. Now, it's my understanding that every single region in the province, and I think there are 6 if I'm not mistaken, every single region is in trouble. Now, they have a rating scale, like a red, a yellow, green. I'm not sure if there's another color, but every region, except one, every region is flashing red. That's dangerous. That is dangerous. That means caseloads are not manageable. The work isn't being done the way that it needs to be done, and that doesn't even begin to scratch the surface of the stress that the staff are under. So right now, we know in Alberta, average caseloads for AISH generalists are between 350 people and 400 people. That is not sustainable, Madam Chair. That is not sustainable. So I would like to know, what is this ministry doing to address the caseload pressure, and more specifically, what is the work that is being undertaken as a result of the workload assessment model that has been completed in the region? So I would be concerned if I had 5 of the 6 regions flashing red and then the 6th one flashing yellow. That's alarming.
Thank you so much, Honourable Member. Now we'll turn the time over to the Minister to answer.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So many detailed questions. So what I'm going to try to do is I'll go right to the answers that I'm aware of. I will make sure I leave a little bit of time for my ADM to go even further for more details. Let me go right to the direct answers to your questions. About the total number of full-time equivalent staff for handling appeal process, we have 20. So you got that one. The other one is you're asking about the total number of appeals for 2021. It's 703. So those are the hard fact. The other part is I think you lumped so many things interrelated. You talk about the full-time equivalent of the full ministry staff and what's the impact to workforce, so on and forth. I can let you know that currently we have 2,547 full-time equivalent. I also want to take this opportunity to say that during the responsible spending exercise we have, the department took a very thoughtful process that through natural retirement and people leaving the jobs that we not filling the positions, that we realized 100, let me get that number for you. What's the total number of? We, through that natural process, thoughtful, considerate process, we eliminated 102 positions. And when we did that, it was not at the expense of closing any programs or closing any services. So I want to take this opportunity to thank my staff, thank the 2,547 of them. Actually, it's more than that. That's just a full-time equivalent. For being there for our burdens at this most difficult time, particularly what pandemic has challenged us to be. Another part, I want to give credit to my executive team. Many of them are with me today here, and through their reports. They've done a fantastic job. Their management to staff ratio has increased from traditionally 1 to 11 to today 1 to 14. So all of them has taken extra work in making this happen. So I want to give them my heartfelt thanks, and they're supporting me today as you can see. Another piece of how we increased efficiency without adding more cost is we restructured the department. The department used to be 7 regional offices. I think, as all of member was 7
regions.
7 regions. But as a result of that reorg, we cut that into 2. So many functions has been consolidated, and that saves administrative work there. On top of that, I also want you to know that in my opening, I referenced that we're using digitalized, modernized process for application. Not only made it simpler for applicants, but made it easier for staff. So that reduce errors, reduce back and forth. If you can imagine, if you're still using paper faxing in and faxing out, it takes forever to get the required material back. Versus the digital-wise, you eliminate the errors in transaction, you significantly increase the proficiency on that. It is because of all of those efforts, as you can see, being responsible and reduce unnecessary cost and introduce innovative new process, that we are maintaining high quality of service with reduced amount of staff. So that's that part. Now let me shift to the subject. You mentioned about shelter benefits, I believe, and I also recall you have repeated the similar question of this in the House. Because that 30-second time, you really can't go too far. But I like to take time today so that you get a full picture of what we're talking about here. As I mentioned earlier, all the statutory benefits stay static. We don't change that. The additional supplemental benefit is also being regulated by ministerial orders. The one you referenced about shelter is a part of many parts of the so-called supplemental benefit, including special diet, medical needed equipment, and refeeding residents, and so on and forth.
If you could direct your comments through the chair
I
as well,
will.
please. Yes.
Thanks for your reminder. With that, the shelter additional allowance, that 320 some dollars you mentioned about, is in that context. So the ministerial regulation on this one stays the same since 2018. And this is when the previous government is in place. So there's no change on that at all. What was happened is in 2019, Auditor General had a report. In that report, it identified some inconsistencies. We have 7 regional offices making interpretations of policies. There's some inconsistencies happen there. In responding to Auditor General's report, we implemented the new way of doing things, clarify the policies, and stayed true to what that is. Many of those supplemental benefits are time limited for special circumstances. It's not an add-on to ongoing benefits that extended from your statutory benefit. So I just want to make sure that you got that complete story today. So let me move on to other part. I think you have a number of specific questions for appeal. Before I ask Tracy to get ready for some of the detailed questions, I want to assure you, when you mentioned about what's the recruitment process for appointing people into the appeal panel, you referenced about what's the diversity ratio on that. Let me tell you this. As a member of ethnic minority myself, I am with you. We will make sure that in our appointments, not only reflecting our cultural differences, but reflecting all kinds of diversity in there, including disability, people with lived experiences, and so on and forth. We are in the process of recruiting for that, so I welcome your work. Join me to make sure that we truly reflect the diversity of Alberta. Now, next one, I'm going to ask Tracy, if you don't mind, to come to the podium to answer many of the detailed questions of the time it takes and from when to start, when the decision will be made. Thank you, Tracy.
Thank you for the question. I appreciate the opportunity.
Kindly introduce yourself, please.
Absolutely. So I'm Tracy Werstiak, Assistant Deputy Minister for Strategic Services in the Ministry. So just a few of the responses in relation to the appeal panels. So yes, we do use an open and transparent process. We currently have about 80 members. Many of them do have lived experiences with disabilities. We have a wide range of competencies on that panel, everything from lawyers to community leaders that help us with those fair and impartial panels. Right now, the current standard is 6 months for an appeal to be heard in AISH, which we know we're working towards reducing that time. We have around 17 standards that we track our appeal panels in relation to how quickly to respond to a notice of appeal, to how quickly we get the decision out from the hearing, which is 2 weeks. So of those 17 standards, we're continuing to work towards improving the time it takes to hear an appeal. We are looking at some digital improvements to our appeal panels to also improve efficiency so that it doesn't take as long. Currently, we have 24 FTEs in the appeal secretariat. That we did actually fill a number of vacant FTEs in the last fiscal year and also added some FTEs to the appeal secretariat. So we are actually taking active steps to improve the appeal secretariat. We did have virtual hearings during the pandemic. We have found that has actually increased accessibility and accommodates a lot of our appellants who have been very happy with that arrangement, and has also helped to reduce some of the backlog. Minister already spoke to the fact that we are changing our processes, improving our processes. That's new information cannot be introduced during an appeal process, which will also deal with some of the issues that we're encountering. I will say there was a question about the appeal numbers for 2021-22. The total number of appeals was 1,101. Of that, 825 were AISH, 232 were income support.
Thank you so much. That's wraps up the time for the minister and his team. We'll now turn it back over to the official opposition. Please proceed, honourable member.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm wondering if, Madam Chair, if I could get, I think it was the ADM, to noted 17 standards that were used through the H. I'm wondering if that could be tabled for this committee.
Allow that? Sorry, could you say that one more time? I'm having difficulty hearing.
Yeah, I'm wondering, so the ADM just mentioned 17 standards that are employed for the appeal secretariat, the process. I'm wondering if those documents could be tabled for the committee.
So that'll be tabled in the chamber for the benefits of all if they decide to do it.
Sorry?
It'll be tabled in the chamber. The chamber is the proper forum for that to happen for the benefit of all members.
Okay. Not how it works. Okay. Well, I'm going to move on and talk about homelessness. I'm going to talk specifically, I think that we've all spent a lot of time, sadly, when we have the mental images of homelessness, we think of the large cities, and sadly it's a devastating picture. But I would like to focus today on issues that rural and remote communities are facing as it relates to homelessness. So, Madam Chair, imagine my surprise in a conversation with the Mayor of Wetaskiwin when we were talking about homelessness, when he let me know that he found out that the City of Wetaskiwin would be receiving some funding to address a very real problem. You may have heard in the news they had, there was a bit of an encampment, the conditions were awful, and they found out on Twitter, I think, or a press release, that they were getting some money from the UCP to set up a warming trailer. Now, I'm not, it's great, I'm glad that they did receive some funding, but I'm a little concerned at how it rolled out when we know that communities all over Alberta are struggling and they're looking for partners, not just to fund, but to help find solutions. So now the problem with this same community, and I'm just using Wetaskiwin as an example because it's happening all over. I've been out to Athabasca, I've been out to Lac La Biche, I've been to Camrose, I've been all over. And I've talked to people about what's going on in their communities. And so I'm going to use the Wetaskiwin example because I think it's a good one. So the mayor also told me that not only did he find out by Twitter or a press release that he was getting money for a shelter or a warming trailer that would be staffed by the Mustard Seed, but he also told me that he has no idea what's going to go on past March 31st, Madam Chair. And so in this budget, there's no information, there's precious little information in terms of objectives and metrics for us to go back and look at, Madam Chair. I'm sure you'll agree with me. But when you look at this, he doesn't know what's going on past March 31st. That doesn't seem right. Seems to me that if you have a community like Wetaskiwin that has struggled with enormous stresses, that you would want to work with them to ensure that there is no gap and there are no problems. But that is not the case. So, the strategic plan notes that $49 million will be spent on homeless shelters and other supports for the most vulnerable. So I would like a detailed list of where that will be spent and what are the anticipated outcomes. Now, let me give you, I'm going to go back to my Wetaskiwin example, Madam Chair. And one of the things, and I'm only going to mention this because this is just one of the dangers of poor planning that this government has demonstrated again and again that they're all about. So with very little thought, I think they were likely reacting to some really horrific news stories about what was happening in Wetaskiwin that made some money available for these shelters. Boom, they were there, staff were there. Thankfully, we're in a pandemic. I was very grateful that there was something, but there was no ramp. There was no ramp to get to this trailer, not a ramp. We knew that there were people in that encampment that actually were wheelchair users that needed a ramp to get into the warming shelter. So, of course, there is a ramp now, and that ramp was built at a cost of $25,000. That's ridiculous. And that's what happens when you fail to plan and you fail to communicate with the community that you're supposed to be helping. That's a problem. So some of my questions are, key objective 1.2 on page 21, Ministry Business Plan, is the only mention of homelessness in the entire CSS business plan. So the objective indicates that the UCP will develop a coordinated community response to the homelessness model with consideration of provincial, coordinated community response to homelessness task force recommendations, and in partnership with service providers, civil society, on and on it goes. So once again, this is the UCP putting up a task force in place of action. Now, I'm not saying a task force is a bad idea. I think anytime you get bright people together that have all kinds of ideas to solve problems, that's a good thing. But you can't stop the work in place of a task force. So my question about the task force, we know that it's made up of 16 women and men. All are from Calgary and Edmonton, save someone from Lee Alta Inc., which is a business from Lethbridge, and representation from the Enoch Cree Nation. So what about representation from rural and remote communities? Perhaps I'm misunderstanding, or someone represents a few different communities. That could very well be. I'm happy to be corrected about that, but I would like to know why there is no rural or remote representation. Also, there are no measures, other measures, which is likely why this government, under the budgeted for homeless shelters, line 5.2 of government estimates, cut homelessness support outreach services. So government will tell you, no, we're doing all of this work. We're really focused on creating a model that houses people rapidly and all of the things that they say. But the reality is there is less money for homeless outreach supports. So page 21 of the CSS business plan, initiative supporting outcome 1 notes that $89.6 million for homeless support outreach services, line 5.4. This amount is less than the forecast and an actual reduction of $200,000 from last year's budget. We know that the number of people needing homeless supports has not decreased. So please explain this budgeting process. I don't understand it. With a huge growth in number of precariously housed homeless and people using more than 30% of their income, in addition to the population growth and poverty explosion, Albertans really need an answer. Can you please justify this reduction in spending? It's not a big reduction, but this reduction will impact people's lives, particularly communities like Wetaskiwin. Page 21 of the business plan, initiative supporting outcome 1 notes that $48.7 million is allocated to homeless shelter. There is no increase from last year's budget, but the forecast was $24.7 million higher than budget. Is it the goal to actually hide actual spending, in-year spending? Madam Chair, I mean, that's concerning to me. So when I look at the government budget estimates, in good faith, I assume that's what the government plans to spend. But that is not the case. So we know there's additional spending that's going to happen in homeless supports. We heard about it in the fiscal plan, but we don't see it in the ministry's business plan. We also know that there is $1.6 million that's dedicated to Jessie's House, which is a women's shelter in Morinville, but we don't see it in the ministry budget. We don't see it in the projections in CSS. We hear about it through the provider. We hear about it briefly in the fiscal plan, but we don't see it in this ministry's budget. So again, I'm questioning, is it to artificially make the spending look flat? Is it to make it look like there's a savings? Is it about doing more with less? I don't really understand. So if the minister could explain that to me, that would be wonderful. You know, and I want to go back to a couple of other comments that the minister made just before I started speaking. And he talked about the FTEs and, you know, it's all good. We're not cutting any programs. I never said that this would result in less programming. What I said is that it results in an enormous amount of stress on staff, an enormous amount of pressure on caseloads that have exploded. So for an AISH generalist to, on average, have 350 to 400 people on their caseload and then lose a colleague and have to take on some of that caseload, that's not reasonable. And perhaps I'm misunderstanding something, that caseloads are shrinking or there's a different way to deliver services. I'm happy to hear about it. But just removing another 100 FTEs from a ministry that's already overtaxed, I would like to know what that plan is. And finally, Madam Chair, one of the comments that I've been meaning to make for a while is repeatedly heard from this minister that AISH benefits are generous. And they're, you know, among the highest in the country. I think we've already established it's incorrect. There are 2 places that there are higher benefits. But to say to someone who is living in poverty, and we know that $16.85 a month requires people to live in poverty. That's just the way it is. It's poverty. And to expect people to be grateful for that And to be proud that that's what we're giving people is that forces them to live in poverty is just, that bothers me. So I think maybe we should rethink about the way we frame it. That no, it's not great, it's okay, but it's not great. And people are still living in poverty. So I think maybe crowing about it is maybe a tact that I would urge the minister and his officials to rethink, particularly when they're putting it in print, because people with disabilities are paying attention. And when they see that they're, you're supposed to be grateful for this, that's just unacceptable to me. So I'm going to stop there and turn it over and hopefully get some answers.
Thank you so much, Honourable Member. Now we'll turn the time over to the Minister.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for the questions. Boy, I have lots of different views on how the question was framed. But, in answering this question, I'm going to provide you with our perspective, a responsible government perspective of how we handle all those issues. Let me begin by the question of homelessness concern in Wetaskiwin. I can tell you, honorable members, that through you, Madam Chair, I've been to Wetaskiwin many times, including the summer breaks that we had. We have a fantastic local MLA who is also the Minister of Minister Wilson, who is also the Minister of Indigenous Relations. I'm very pleased to see through him not only City Council but the surrounding Indigenous leaders from various reserves in the area, but social support agencies, health, we're all there, and including that temporary camp that Minister Wilson and I visited a couple of times too. So let me assure you this. The local groups through Minister Wilson, the local MLA, has been working diligently, collaborate on that. And as you can appreciate, homelessness is such a challenging, complex issue that requires many stakeholders working together to make a difference. In the course of that, I believe there is a change of service provider from one who used to be there to the ones that the group decided to have current. I believe Master Seed is what they choose to be today. I must say that when you dealing with complex issues, when you work with a group of collaborative forces like that, the best is leave those decisions to their hands to decide who is the best operator for such. So I applaud them work together to find solutions that is workable to their community. And to the contrary to what the opposition member questioned about our funding decision, Minister Wilson is part of the cabinet. Minister Wilson is also the local MLA. Every step along the line, when we had our opportunities to give financial support there, he's the first to know, and he actually published, I saw his weekly newsletters there, and one was picked up by the local newspaper too. Community are very thankful that the local MLAs and this government work hand by hand with them, provided funding not only during pandemic for temporary shelters, but also the solutions for the long-term one. Rest assured, there isn't a single silver bullet to solve a complex problem like that. But I've been in social work for over 28 years before I stepped into the political realm. I am a firm believer that the best practice is government work together with community and provide the right support and resources there and empowering the community to find local solutions to mitigate the issues here. That is precisely what I saw happening in Wetaskiwin. So I want to take the opportunity to thank Minister Wilson and thank the City Council, thank police, RCMP, social service agencies, and the shelter operators by continue working together on that. And that work is also related to the task force that Honourable Member mentioned about this. If you recall, when we announced the task force, it was at the time we also announced 21.5 million additional shelter support. particularly during the winter season and before the fifth wave pandemic occurred. The reason we did that is purposefully. By throwing money to an issue alone is not a solution to the problem. We must have different ways of thinking how we best can utilize our available resources and come back with the most responsible and responsive answers to the challenges in front of us. So in addition to the 21.5 million, part of that money did go to Wetaskiwin. I believe it's 600,000 there, helped them with their crisis at hand. But also in this task force, we asked for representatives from police to shelters to social service agencies to health, treatment, recovery representatives, and 3 orders government from federal, provincial, and municipal. This is an opportunity that we thought Alberta can lead the country, that homelessness is an issue that across the whole nation. Well, we've been adding resources over the years and coming from different angles, different components of this, yet there is a lack of coordinated approach, put the issue at the center of how we're helping people to get out of that challenging, difficult situation, results as nowhere to live, to stay. I am so thankful that we have that task force, have a representative from a vast majority of stakeholders, and also including experts. Your question about rural representation and with many others, this issue was rising at the day when we were deciding who to put in there to lead this task force. As you can imagine, the number quickly goes, recommendations goes to more than 25, 30, 50. When you have a functioning group, you can't make decisions when it's getting too large. So instead, what we did is we created many specific roundtables. There's one specifically.
Thank you so much, Minister. That concludes your time. And it concludes the first portion of questions for the official opposition. And I see that Honourable Member Lowen has joined us. And please introduce yourself. Let's start with that.
Okay. MLA Todd Lowen, Central Peace Notley.
All right. And so now we'll move on to the independent members for 20 minutes of questions. Would you like to combine your time with the Minister?
I'd like to go back and forth, but it's up to the Minister.
Minister, what's your preference?
Can we try the block time 5-5?
Yeah.
And then we can reevaluate.
Yeah.
Make sure you got all your questions.
My comments are fairly short and quick, so I don't think it'd be too bad at all. Okay. But happy to do that. We're just going to start on business plan, page 23. The question is, what is included in other revenue, and why does it look like it's decreased by about half? Also on page 23, and I'll just kind of read them slowly so you have time to find them. What is included in premiums, fees, and licensing, and why is it not included in budget 2021-22? And again on page 23, why did the ministry, why was the funding for homelessness and outreach support services cut or dropped by 60 million? And it appears that, between 2021 actual and the 2022-23 estimate, that's where that drop is. Again on page 23, what is included in services provided to other ministries? And what changed and why did it decrease? Again on page 23, what is included in capital investment line item disability services? And why did this investment double in the 2022-2023 budget estimate? Again on page 23, why did disability services as a ministry expense increase so dramatically between 2021 actual and 22-23 estimate? And again on page 23, why does investment income revenue disappear from the 22-23 budget estimate? And what was included in investment income? And those are my questions.
Member, are you surrendering your time, or do you have anything else?
No, I'm going to let the
Okay.
minister go.
All right. Thank you so much. We'll proceed to the minister.
Thank you, Honourable Member. I like your high efficiency. Let's keep up with that. Great questions. Thank you so much. So let me address some of the questions you raised earlier about you saw the budget. You felt like, for instance, homelessness part is a decrease rather than increase. The fact is it's not decreased. It's maintained at same level. What you might interpret that is in the first cost amount, there is COVID-related one-time expenses there. So that's might give you that appearance. But the reality is for sustainable ongoing funding, it remained the same. For capital investment, that is related to addressing what we call the complex need. You know, for some of our people with disability, because of the severity of their disability, their behavior sometimes requires additional.
It's for Mitchner Center and those other homes.
Yeah.
For us to do bathtubs, that sort of thing.
This is where that we do have folks still living in Mitchner Center and supportive housing in Calgary, graduation, I call graduation programs there. I visit them there. It's people with the most severe conditions that not only their own safety is a question, and sometimes including the caregivers. So it takes quite a bit of skills, including the accommodation, the structure of the facility. You need to have the safety, everything else in consideration. So the budget, capital budget we're talking about there is about renovation, keeping up the cost. And also I believe there's a proposed expansion for Calgary that we're expanding the capacity there to keep up the demands there. So that's the capital investments related to that. Disability sector, you were asking why we see an increase. In my opening remark, we talk about for that whole section, we do have a $60.8 million increase that largely related to addressing families with children with disability and other areas. Part of those commitments is our platform commitment that we committed to increase $3.5 million to enhance support services there, particularly related to what I call is our innovative ways of addressing the increasing demand is empowering family. I think all the members, you probably will support us in this way. So for families with children with disability, I had the luxury of, during the summer tour, visit many of them throughout the province. I do recall in your region, in North region, we met with is that Inclusion Alberta, and through them, we empowered families to become part of the manager for deciding what kind of support services to them. Through our platform commitment, we agreed that we'll increase that portion of support. Honourable Member, I think you and I will know this by heart. When we speak of when parents get involved, when parents understand the needs of their kids, when parents become part of the key stakeholders, working with our ministry, working with professionals to find the most relevant support services for their kids, that's where efficiency, effectiveness, all scores high. So that's part of the reason you saw the added support that we're addressing there. Let me keep going about other part. I think you referenced the question of licensing. I'm not sure I completely got that question. If you don't mind, repeat that part.
Yeah, no problem. Appreciate your answer so far. And you did mention something about empowering families, and I agree with that, and I appreciate that comment. I do have a grandson that's disabled, and so I think the support that comes to families to be able to keep those children in their home is very important, so I appreciate that. I wanted to mention that. But going back to the premiums, fees, and licensing line item, I asked what was included in that, and why was it not included in budget 21-22, and then it's back on in, was in, I'm just looking at my notes here. Actual was 0 in 21-22, and then the budget was 257. So I just wanted a little clarity on what's included and why the change in the budget there.
Thank you for that. Good question. So this is one that addressing some of the very specialized needs for the complex client I referred earlier, that when they are directly cared by us through Mitchell Center and others, and as you can imagine, many of them require specialized service that requires licensing and permission in doing so. We're doing that on behalf of our clients, and they pay those, contributing to those pieces of cost. I'm going to turn this question to Owen and then Clay, my ADM here. They are more expert on those detailed questions. Owen, you want to?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, thanks.
Olin Lovely, SFO. Madam Chair, the premium fees and licenses, that was coded to that line item as opposed to other revenue where it should have been, and it's for clients paying for some services in our direct operations. Thank you.
Nothing to add, Minister. Owen answered the question.
Okay, good. Thank you. Honourable member, you're good on that one? Through the chair, of course. Yeah.
Yeah, that's good.
Okay, thanks.
And the only other question was the other revenue on page 23, and where it decreases. What is included in other revenue, and why did it decrease by over half?
Thank you. Another great question. This department, we deliver the statutory benefits. With that, there's also a function ministry play. I don't know many people know this, is fraud investigation and appeal and all that. We want to make sure that we get the money to the right people's hand, not the one that's fraud the system and not supposed to be there, got in there. So what you saw here is a reflection of that. When we succeeded on appeals, on investigations, their overpayment occurred, their recovery of benefit that they are not entitled for. This is a part of the work we show. We are a responsible government. In one hand, we offer, as you heard me saying earlier, social safety net, some of the core benefits that maintains dignity and respect for anybody, doesn't matter what kind of barriers you enter into, we're there for you. But we don't encourage what you call irresponsible spending of government taxpayers' money. And I think, honourable member, you are one of those, I firmly believe, have no tolerance in that. You'll be pleased to see that we're demonstrating with discipline, we're demonstrating with professionalism, we're demonstrating not only we can provide services with care, but with responsibility.
Thank you, Minister, and I just want to say thank you to yourself and to your staff for being here today and answering questions. Appreciate the good work you do, and if you end up in the Peace Country again, happy to introduce you to my grandson Ezra. So, thanks.
Thank you so much for your offer. When the new summer comes, I sure hope that we're getting back to normal days. I do want to travel around. I do want to meet with people that we're serving. I think the northern region, in many pieces of my ministry, is an area of great priority for me, particularly for remote areas, isolation, and generally speaking, when people try to access service in that condition, it's a heck of a lot more difficult than, let's say, my constituency in Calgary foothills. In the urban center, all the services are located within 20 minutes to 40 minutes distance. So I'm fully aware of the accessibility. Make sure that folks like in your area equally enjoy the support that we're providing for all our burdens. So thank you for that.
Thank you. Thank you.
Back to you, Madam Chair. Do I still
Right,
have
so,
some
member,
time or?
You have, there's still 7 minutes and 45 seconds left in the time.
We'll see that, and you can carry on to the others.
Okay, but Minister, if you just wanted to,
If you don't mind, Madam Chair, with this quick, rapid back and forth, sometimes it's hard to get all the information out on the table. If you don't mind, I do want to talk a bit more about how this ministry, trying to function as a social safety net, but also a empowering mechanism that to help Albertans reach their full benefits. Madam Chair, through you to all members, when I open my remark, we talk about Budget 2022 not only maintained all the core benefits that we provide, whether it's age, whether it's income support, whether it's support for people with disability, support for families and people who fleeing from domestic violence. We provided, maintained the core funding there. But please notice that the new dollar we're adding to the $34 million we added to this is specifically contributing to the function I talk about, empowering mechanism. When I travel around the province and meet with families, I meet with people with disability and others, Madam Chair, I want to share a couple of those stories because it made a huge difference to me and impact how I do my day-to-day work with this ministry. When I traveled in Edison, a small town near Jasper, we have this conversation with Anne, and she gave me permission. I can share this because there's some implications. By sharing the story, we can empower more people to be successful. And Anne is an employer for a bottle depot there. And in a casual conversation about something else, Anne says, "Hey, Minister, I had this fresh new experience that really taught me quite a bit. I want to share with you." I said, "Go ahead." So what she was saying is when she operating the bottle depot, as you can appreciate, it's a tedious job, and for many people, it's not highly attractive. She keeps losing people, and when you hire someone when their mind is not on the job, you need to supervise them quite a bit. And then she said, in the long run, it's quite costly when you keep losing people and always trying to find somebody. And then she said, something changed when I hire. I'm going to use the name Frank just for protecting his personal privacy. It's not Frank, but it's a person with disability. And Anne said, what a change. When I offered the same job to Frank, this is his first job that he had through a free market fair competition. And he had previous experiences of subsidized work and placement, so on and forth. But this is the first one he got it through fair market competition. Boy, Anne says, since I hired Frank, this changed his life. He not only realized he can make meaningful contributions to the society, have an overwhelming sense of self-pride, and he treat that job like a new life. He's always the first one when the door is open, always the last one you need to remind him to go to home. And Anne says, Minister, I never need to worry about that. Why didn't I learn this some time ago? This is way better for me as an employer. So that really inspires me when I'm talking about why we're putting 34 million extra money to help people through employment to realize their full potential. This isn't simply about money. This is about helping people reach to a level that they have a sense of purpose in life when they can see their contribution to society, and they have an overwhelming sense of better mental health too. So it is that I wanted to take the opportunity to share this budget 2022 through Madam Chair to you and all the members, and through you to Albertans, that our government committed not only provide the core benefits to maintain that social safety, we're also functioning as an empowering mechanism to give people the first chance when you want to get a job to be successful in your life. We're there for you. So thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you so much, Minister. And if there's nothing else, then we will proceed to break. I understand there's fresh coffee, so everyone enjoy your 5 minutes.
Good morning, Mr. Minister. Just, I guess maybe we should start by asking, do you want to go with block time, or do you want to do back and forth, or how would you prefer to do it? Through the chair.
Just to be consistent, I don't mind we try the rotation first. If you're not satisfied, all our colleagues have your questions into the time slot, and then we can rotate. Let's give it a try first.
That is absolutely fine. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
Please proceed, member.
Okay. First, I want to start by thanking you for being here, and all of your staff for being here today. And it takes a lot to be a minister, and it takes a lot to work with a minister and for a minister, and on behalf of Albertans. And life can sometimes get messy, and our ministries are there to try and deal with it. And so I just want to say thank you for the work that you do on behalf of Albertans. Prior to being an MLA, I was a social studies teacher, and I thought I knew about government. And then as an MLA, I began to realize that there was lots that I didn't know. And one of the things that I have learned over the last 7 years of being a minister is that every ministry is important. Some ministries are perhaps a little more sexy. Some perhaps have a little more some perhaps have a little more money behind them, but every ministry has a responsibility to the people of Alberta, and they are important. And I'm not sure that there's any more important than the ministry that we have here today. I'm eventually going to get to take a look at the budget estimates here, and I'm going to be referring to page 49 on your budget estimates. But I want to preface my questions with this observation. I mentioned that life can get messy sometimes. I think it's the case with all of our lives. We can find ourselves in crisis, and we can be vulnerable. We can find ourselves where perhaps our income is no longer there, and we're wondering how we move ahead. And there are times when sometimes as Albertans we wonder, where are our basic needs going to come from? And as an MLA, I've realized that people do come to you when their lives are in crisis.
Point of order. 29B.
We have had a point of order call. Please proceed.
29B. Madam Chair, this very member objected to statements of context earlier on and has failed to address the actual point while we're here.
And
so
this is true. You have raised a very good point, member. And so, a member, please proceed to your questions.
I would be glad, Madam Chair. I will be dealing with page 49. And so maybe if the minister wants to turn to page 49 of the budget estimates, and he will see that there is, in the budget estimates, it shows an increase of about 35.6 million from budget 2020. I want to address that increase in the budget. But when I address it, I want to realize that the people that come into my office are people sometimes that their lives have gone into crisis, and they are wondering where they're going to stay. How are they going to address the fact that they have no place to go and it's 35 below? And we see an increase of about $35.6 million in the budget from 2022 or from 2020, and I would like the minister to address what is the reason for the increase in that overall budget. We live in a society where, at least in my town, sometimes when people are in crisis, we look at the civil society to address that, and sometimes government to address it, and sometimes a combination of both of those groups. And small towns are often very different than big cities. And so sometimes people can can face these kinds of crises without having to go to the government. But sometimes they really need to have an MLA step in on their behalf. I know that there's times as a teacher I used to have to do that, but as an MLA, I guess when I first started, I didn't realize that I would have to do that. So we see an increase in the budget. How has the ministry been able to use that increase to meet the needs of the people that I serve? Can you elaborate, or on a related note, why was the ministry's 2021 budget higher than the 2021-22 forecast as per the estimates on page 49? And through you to the Minister, Madam Chair, can you elaborate on how supports are being maintained? We know people have required additional supports since the onset of the pandemic, but can you provide a few of the areas that you focused on with that increase from 2020? Thank you. And I'll pass my time over to the Honourable MLA, Mr. Amer.
Thank you to my colleague, and thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Minister, and the department staff for the time here today and the work done in the past year. I know that there have been tremendous pressures in every ministry, but certainly in this particular Ministry of Community and Social Services, where the challenges of the pandemic have created heightened obstacles for all vulnerable populations. To the Minister and through the Chair, of course, one of the particular challenges has undoubtedly been the difficulty in navigating through the pandemic with respect to employment for Albertans with disabilities. I know that the Ministry of Community and Social Services has both an obligation and also a commitment to assisting Albertans with disabilities in finding employment, and I want more information about this particular issue. I'll refer you to your business plan, Minister, under at page 22 under initiatives supporting key objectives. I would like to ask through the Chair if the Minister could please explain how the $33.6 million investment in employment partnerships in this 2022-2023 fiscal year will specifically work to benefit Albertans with disabilities find employment. And if you can go into a little bit of detail with respect to that, I'm wondering if you can elaborate, Minister, on the type of programming that this funding supports and how this money will integrate further with respect to Alberta's recovery plan as well. I would then like to direct the Minister to page 134 of the fiscal plan, which shows the AISH budget and an increase of $12 million from budget 2020 to 2021. I know that the Minister has spoken in some detail about the increases to AISH earlier today, but my questions focus a little bit on something more in particular. I want to know from the Minister, Madam Chair, how this budget addresses caseloads and cost pressures for the AISH program specifically, and if the Minister could go into some detail about that, that would be helpful in informing the members of this committee here as to what is being done to address those obvious caseload pressures that you're dealing with. How much of the AISH budget goes directly to clients? How much of that goes to administering the program? I think it's important that we know the difference there. In addition to that, Minister, through the Chair, will AISH clients see any changes to their benefits as a result of Budget 2022? There is some funding for fetal alcohol spectrum disorder FASD initiatives that are being maintained at $25.2 million. I also understand that you brought back the FASD WRAP program after the previous government cut it. Can you talk a little bit about these programs and what they entail and why you decided to bring it back along with some of the initiatives that are behind the reintroduction of that after the former government cut that program altogether? How are the FASD service networks making a difference in the lives of people affected by FASD, and what was the motivation for bringing it back, and can you talk a little bit about whether or not the impact that you're seeing now or that you intend to see was some of that motivation for bringing it back? Minister, in the last 30 seconds, I'm going to try and get my last questions in. Page 19 of the business plan, at the third paragraph, talks about the pandemic and the significant impact that it continues to have on vulnerable Albertans. Can you please provide a bit more information on how CSS has reacted to the emerging needs of the pandemic? And do you expect to take on additional pandemic-related costs in 2022? If so, where is that reflected and what do you foresee that to be? What effect?
Thank you, Honourable Member. If you could save that last question for the next round, that would be great. And we'll turn the time now over to the Minister for his response.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, colleagues, and great questions, and particularly many detailed ones. I'm happy to address them all, but before I begin, I want to also offer my appreciation for your collegial support. Without all of you, we can't be where we are today, not only balancing our book, but added more into my budget so that we can take care of most vulnerable in our community. So thank you for that. Going back to, I'll try to address all the questions as soon as try to address all the questions you raised, hopefully within 10 minutes. If not, I will use future times to get back to you. Page 49 articulated the 35.6 million increase from budget 2020. This is our effort to demonstrating that budget 2022 ensures community social services program remain fully funded. So this is fully, including age, income support, disability services, and helping people experiencing homelessness or domestic violence get the service they need. A point of the notion that you all ought to know that with the budget that we currently have, 90% of the money we're talking about here goes directly to individuals. So this is what we call statutory benefit that ministry just flows directly to the hands of people. So rest assured, money is well spent in that regard. So the services that we're providing here continue to be delivered on a sustainable approach. This is something I believe honorable members, you and I share that common belief. Yes, we need to provide service, but we also need to be mindful of sustainability. Money don't grow out of trees. We need to work hard to generate revenue, and then we spend wisely. So you will see that throughout this budget in terms of our discipline. In your related note, talking about Ministry's 2021 budget is higher than last year's forecast, and why such? I want you to know that when we've shown you the forecast amount, that also included the pandemic one-time funding that we allocated. So generally speaking, almost every line item, when you read it like that, you will see that part. So what we're talking here is ongoing sustainable funding, which maintained most of that, including added 34 million addition to that. So I hope that answered that question you raised. And getting back to the second question on business plan page 22, you're asking question about with our employment support programs, where specifically those things will be spent. Honourable Member, I'm happy to share with you that 20 million of that new dollar that we're talking about will be part of what we call Alberta at Work initiative. And this is a cross-ministry collaborative work that not only from labor, from advanced education, and us working together for this. Of course, our components of that contribution directly aimed at people are currently receiving income support or age, or I call vulnerable Albertans. They tend to have more barriers than others, and some of those barriers are very specific to our client group. So our intention is the 20 million there will be used in a targeted way. So through our ministry working in partnership with
nonprofit organizations, we're going to allocate the money through that partnership agreement, specifically target trainings like training and skill developments like WIMS, that stand for Workplace Hazard Materials Information System training, first aid training, covering the cost of equipment needs for work, covering costs for transportation for some of our most vulnerable clients that have mobility issues. Those are tangible, specific support functions as enabling force to help our clients to fully participate in the workforce. Last year, for your record, there are 32,000 Albertans through those support services is able to find jobs and live without relying on income support program from us, whether it's a regular one or the ACE one. So that is worth notion. So we're not talking about something pointless and wishful thinking. This is real work, real people getting benefit out of here. Moving on to the next question, you're saying, in the 12 million addition we added to ACE, you want to know more specifically what's that for. Honourable member, great question. As you know, that during pandemic, federal benefits has supplemented our burdens that relieved a little bit of our caseload pressure. But with ending of that federal program, we're fully anticipating the rise of caseload in that regard. So part of the 12 million here increase is budgeted for that purpose of managing the return of higher caseload. This is another piece of our specific action and commitment to demonstrate we're being practical, realistic, and disciplined. So we anticipate the rise of caseload will come. We'll budget it accordingly. Next item for the question you asked, funding for fetal alcohol spectrum disorder, or FSAD. Honourable member, you are absolutely correct. It's very unfortunate with the previous government, they discontinued the funding for this. And through our campaign, we heard from Albertans loud and strong that this is a program that is making a huge difference. In fact, FSID, Alberta's work is leading the country in many ways. And so when something works, we ought to maximize its benefits to Albertans rather than cutting them off. So we committed to bring that back, and we did. And I'm very honored to say that I announced this 1 million addition to this in Red Deer, along with our service providers there. We have received nothing but accolades of positive feedback from families, from agencies who work on this. And for myself, I'm a social worker by profession. FSSD issue has been surfaced years ago. And through early days, our learning, professional learning, knowledge transfer for this to today, seeing it's being vastly transferred the knowledge and support services to family, it's a wonderful thing to see, because this is something preventable. If you're during pregnancy, you drink, you fatally damage the child unborn before it's born. And then you bear the consequences for the rest of their life. And it's a very costly consequence, not only for the individual, but for the caregiver, for the family, for the community, and for the province as a whole. But it's preventable. So having FCSD program being operated and creating the prevention impact there, to me, in the long run, it saves a lot for government and for taxpayers. I believe all the members, you and I, are sitting as a conservative government. This is something we get it at no time. But unfortunately, as I mentioned, the previous government don't seem to stand about that part. I'm glad we made it a return on that one. Madam Chair, how much time I have left?
40 seconds left.
Oh. So I'll try to I think I may not be able to address your last question for business plan of pandemic. Very quickly, we did spend 19.5 million for homeless shelters as one-time funding for capacity 24/7 support, expansion of services for that. We did add 2 million to women's emergency shelter, another 1.5 million to operate Commonwealth Stadium in Edmonton, as you all know. In partnership with federal government, we made additional 11 million in funding through Critical Workers Benefit Program. So as you can see, during the most difficult time in our province, we did our part to help Albertans.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Minister. Now we'll move to 5 minutes of questions from the official opposition, followed by 5 minutes of response from the Minister. As mentioned, members are asked to advise the Chair at the beginning of their rotation if they wish to combine their time with the Minister's time. And please remember that the discussion should flow through the Chair at all times, regardless of whether or not speaking time is combined. Please proceed, Honourable Member.
Yeah, no, I don't want to combine. So, okay, thanks. So I'm going to talk about some of the items in disability services. I'm going to focus on PDD, which is Persons with Developmental Disabilities, and FSCD, Family Support for Children with Disabilities. So, of course, one of the first things I did was had a look on open data just to get a sense of what the wait lists were like for FSCD and PDD. And as far as I could tell, it was not updated since 2020. And so I'm unsure why that is, if this government's no longer reporting wait lists. So clarification would be helpful. I think it's incredibly helpful to know the wait list numbers when you're looking at the projected budget amounts. So that would be good. The other thing is I understand that it is now policy of PDD to, I guess, use a set of criteria when deciding who is most in need on the wait list. So last year, I think during budget estimates, Madam Chair, we agreed on there was about 2,000 people waiting for services in PDD. And yet this government only assesses people with, I'm assuming, the highest need to get new supports or new dollars. So I'm wondering if the minister or the ministry could explain or table what criteria is used to decide who is most in need and how many people left that waiting list. So why is there no open data or wait list for both PDD, FSCD? How many people are on the wait list? All wait lists, and I'm talking about whatever stage they're in the process for FSCD. In addition to PDD, doesn't matter if it's service provider or not. What are the total numbers on both of those wait lists? What is the criteria used to fund people off of the PDD wait list? And my question to the ministry is just given the fiscal reality that is now, I'm just curious, has there been any discussion, any consideration whatsoever to raise the wages of non-union PDD staff, so disability workers? So that would be people that are providing supports through PDD and FSCD, actually, to people in the community. Any thought to increasing their wages, which has not been increased, as I understand it, since 2014? My next question is more specifically about FSCD. I would like to know how many multi-disciplinary team panels, so that was a review of a funding decision, whether that was a decision to extend, renew, or stop. Supports under FSCD, doesn't really matter what they are, specialized or not. How many multidisciplinary panels in this last fiscal? And in terms of the budget projection or the budget estimate that we see, how many panels is the ministry budgeting for? So those are my questions. Next, I'd like to talk about, so I noted that there is a plan to do a complex or a build for complex behaviors residential support for people that receive PDD support. So on page it wasn't actually 133, I'm sorry. So if you flip to page 169 of the fiscal plan, I note that complex needs residential build PDD clients, there's a total over 3 years of $20 million. I would like to know specifically what that is for. We heard first mention of it last year during estimates or in the budget documents. I'd like to know the progress that's been made, where this will be, who is the builder, who is the service provider, and what is the projected number of Albertans that will be supported in this project, so in terms of total capacity. My next question is about the hubs that were funded. So there were 4 additional hubs in addition to Calgary and Edmonton to support family managed support contracts through FMS and PDD. So out in those 4 new hubs, I would like to know how many new people with FMS contract are being supported in each one of those 4 hubs. In terms of my next question is, I would like to know, I'm going to run out of time real quick. I would like to know how many new service dog teams are now operating in Alberta. So not from last year to right now, how many new service dog teams are in operation? So I don't mean renewals, I don't mean that they've been retested, I mean new service dog teams. So if it's, so I'm assuming that's going to be taken from your approved service provider list. So that would be quite helpful to have that list. And I will stop there. I am out of time.
Thank you so much, Honourable Member. And now we'll move back to the Minister for his response.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Honourable Member, for all those questions. I'm going to go very quick so that I can capture as much as the answers for you. For the PDD FSAD waiting list, let me clarify that with you. For PDD, yes, there is a waiting list. For FSCD, there's no waiting list. So yeah, so you want that to be clarified to begin with. For PDD, currently, for PDD wait list, it existed long even before this term of government. In your previous term, was the same challenge that we had. So we inherited this from the previous government. But yes, you're right. In terms of how can we address this without leaving people in crisis, we established this critical and urgent needs sort of approach, so that we don't leave anybody who are at high risk of losing a place to stay or have personal safety issues and so on and forth. So those will be taken care of right away. So that's a brand new way of how we are mitigating the challenges that by engaging the service at the early days and acting on the top priorities for the critical urgent needs ones first, and then continue to work out the rest of the planning exercise to help people meet the needs. So that's the difference we're talking about. You mentioned about the numbers of people who are currently on waiting list. Here are the numbers as of today. In December 2020, there are 1935 people on the waiting list, and December 2021, we have 1,412, which representing approximately 27% of decrease as a result of our innovative ways of how to approach this issue. So I hope that is an answer that you can join me to applaud, to thank our workforce, thank our agencies who are working with us and in partnership with us in doing, providing the critical support services while meeting the increased demand. You referenced about the sector salary for our partner agencies. Let me tell you this, as a social worker myself, as somebody who chaired immigrant sector in my previous life, I think it's an issue that we need to address, but I'm pleased to tell you that my ministry is working very closely with Alberta Council on Disability Services and others, including partnering ministries like labor and immigration and advanced education. We're working closely with them to say how, through our employment support services and added money we have, we can make some improvement in that area. So I want to thank you for continuing to raise that question, and I want you to work with us in the coming year so that we can continue making improvement in that area. Just so you know, from an operational point of view, we only have the grant to work in partnership with
community partners, we don't dictate how much they pay for their employee. So just so you know that part. Yeah. Let me move on to your other detailed question regarding open data release timing. By end of March, the open data release will be coming in force. So for whatever numbers you're looking for by then, I hope you will see that. And this is our demonstration as a government maintain transparency, maintain responsibility, maintaining fair and transparent working with all in the sector here. Your next question related to multidisciplinary approaches or teams. Let me assure you that as a social worker myself, and I've been into what we call case conferencing occasions like what you reference here, MDS. It is an opportunity that for families.
All right, thank you so much, Minister. And now we will move over to the government side for their next round of questions. Please proceed.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. And it's funny, I think the member for St. Albert completely read my mind. I was actually going to talk about service dogs too. So hopefully we can get some more answers about these very helpful furry friends that help so many people in our province. Fun fact for the committee, I represent an individual who had the very first owner-trained service dog in the province. And credit where credit is due, I have to say that this was a very good step taken by the former government to allow owner-trained service dogs in Alberta. As we know, and as the minister knows, service dogs are not only very expensive, but there are very long wait lists to get on them, and there are profound benefits to having a companion animal, not only for things like seeing eye dogs, which we had many furry guests in the legislature this week, but for other things such as PTSD, anxiety, other disorders. Service dogs have an amazing impact on individuals and on families as well, especially with young children as well. So, Minister, I have a few questions for you around service dogs. How is your ministry increasing the number of service dogs in Alberta? I would like to know how many of those dogs that are in Alberta are currently certified under the owner-trained program. And also, I was curious, in rural Alberta, we know that we have a lack of testing available for those dogs. So right now, for example, if you have a owner-trained dog in Medicine Hat that you, or Brooks, or anywhere else that you would like to see certified, somebody comes from Edmonton to certify your dog, which is obviously it's a barrier to access to that service, and I think we can all agree on that. So I'm curious, Minister, what we are doing as a government to ensure that these services are more accessible to my constituents who maybe are not as close to Edmonton or have the ability to travel to Edmonton. As we know, these people are also probably on supports like ACE or PDD. So they cannot afford the extra trip, which is, as I know from driving that highway very often, not a short one. So I was just curious if you could expand on that as well. I also would like to know, in this discussion around service dogs, there's also a lot of people who move to Alberta from other provinces who bring their service animal with them, but it's not common that those dogs, that certification that's being offered in BC or Saskatchewan or Ottawa or Ontario or wherever, or even Montana, I had somebody come up from the States as well, where the province didn't actually recognize that dog as being a service dog because that certification wasn't, it was a red tape thing. So in my opinion, it sounds like red tape to me. If the dog is certified, the dog is certified. So I'm curious if we could find ways, or if you've looked into any other ways where we could maybe certify out-of-province dogs to be used in Alberta. And also, I'm curious if the ministry's considered other animals. We know that dogs are not only the only furry friends that can help, but in the UK, I'm learning that today that they've started using miniature horses, and equine therapy has actually been very helpful for rehabilitation. And I actually have a constituent in the gallery today who came to watch estimates today, and I know that he is a rancher himself and has many animals and also many children. So I'm sure that he knows the benefits of having animals around children and what that can do for them. So I'm curious if you could elaborate on that as well to see maybe if we've considered certifying other animals through the owner trained program. But for the most part, Minister, I think I would just like an opportunity to give you an opportunity to highlight just the work that's being done on the service dog file, how we are enhancing the owner train process if that's being done. And also curious, the member for St. Albert asked some very good questions about service dogs as well. So I just wanted to give you another opportunity to elaborate on this very important service for Albertans that I know that my constituents appreciate very much. And I guess the other part of my questions, I have way more questions here, but I'd also like you to, in the same vein, in Medicine Hat right now, I have a constituent who started a fantastic group called Cypress Canine Society. And so the Cypress Canine Society is a group of grassroots individuals who started their own process as an advocacy organization to help people who are trying to access the service dog system. I don't know the better word for that because it really is a system. It's quite long. I think we can all agree on that. But to access service dogs in Alberta. So I'm curious if you could talk about the Civil Society Fund and civil society in general and how that relates to the service dog sector, as well as to help people with disabilities and to help people in your ministry. And I have 15 seconds left, so I will just resign that.
All right, thank you so much, Honourable Member. We'll turn this time over to the Minister.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair, and thank you, Honourable Member, for your passionate questions and lots of good questions there too. And I echo with you that service dogs are providing not only some of the mandated statutory services, but they are a good companion. Serves more than just that one purpose. In fact, 2 days ago, CNIB brought service dogs into legislature. I had the fortunate that meet many of them there, and one of the trainers is my constituent, Debbie. We had a great conversation there. So I want to thank you for raising such a good question in the eyes of people living with disability, particularly for people blind. Guide dogs are a saver. So for their safety, for their day-to-day function, it does tremendous support there. That's one of the reasons our government is continued committed to support this element in our budget. Currently, we before getting into details, I want to clarify that the service dogs is credit through legislation, so there are very stringent process to get them trained and certified because it's related to safety. So that's need to be noted. In terms of your question of what did we do to speed up or create some new ways that more can be considered for more service dogs to be in service. I wanted to acknowledge that we did open up beyond what you call the accredited agencies who provide services within the ministry or the ministry approved list. We also allowed owners to have the option of taking their dogs to go through the same rigorous accreditation and to be certified that way. The lady that Debbie I mentioned to you, my constituent, she's one of those. She shared quite a bit of her experience and perhaps some challenges, and she wanted to see some improvement into our system. Let me tell you this, I'm with you. When we can make changes within our means to make it easier, to make it speedier, to have more supplies of guided dogs than perhaps we currently is limited to, it is always a good thing for Albertans. So I'm with you. And I know MLA, when I traveled summer with you, meeting with your constituency, you've been very actively engaged in your community. And if you have some other stakeholders like Debbie I have in my constituency that they do have specific ideas how we can improve upon our system. I think you mentioned about reducing perhaps the red tape part. I'm on it. I'm for it. So let's work together on that one. I'll just give you some numbers in terms of the service dogs we currently have. For the fiscal year of 2020 to 2021, we have 50 ID card issued during that year. And for that, 26 additional one is certified dogs to the owner-trained option. As you can see, that one is there. And for the service dogs given certification trained by qualified organizations, there are 31 of that. I'll just give you some comparison from a historical point of view. For the total license issued during the fiscal year of 18 to 19, it's 70. For the 19 to 20, it's 100. To 2021, it's 57. And what we're forecasting 2022 is 55. In total, 282 licenses will be issued in that way. So that is regarding the service dog part. I believe your second question related to civil society grant. I do want to answer to your question on that one before I run out of time. We have $6 million in this current budget for the third round left for the $20 million commitment for civil society. And we're anticipating by September we'll roll that out.
Sorry, Minister, are you able to see the timer that we have on the big screen here? Oh, it's just off right now. But there's a big blue screen at the bottom that the committee clerk puts up. So we'll keep track of the time for you. If you want
Please.
to watch the screen,
That'll be very helpful.
then you don't have to worry about keep setting it and turning it off. We'll manage that for you.
Okay.
And so let's turn this time back over to the official opposition. Please proceed, member.
Thank you. Thank you. So just given this block system, obviously not all questions are being answered. So I'm going to circle back and remind the minister of some questions. There's a lot, but some questions that it would be great to get answers to today. So one of my questions was this year there's a projected 102 FTEs that will be eliminated in community and social services. I would like to know where. Where are these FTEs coming from? Also, there is a complex needs residential build, PDD, $20 million to be spent over 3 years on page 169. I asked a series of questions. I would really appreciate some answers. Who is the builder? Who is the provider? And what is the capacity? I would like clarification. The minister, I believe, said there is no wait list for FSCD. I would just like clarification on that. Out of the new dogs that the minister listed, I think he's forecasting 55 new dogs. I would like to know, out of those 55 new dogs, how many came at an expense to the owner? So how many were charged by a service provider that's on the approved list that charges for a dog? So it can be anywhere between $25,000 and $45,000. So how many of those 55 dogs will come from for-profit providers? Also, I would like to know if there has been any change to the intake policy at Michener Center. How many people are currently residing at Michener Center right now? What is the projection for next year? I'd like to know if there have been any changes overall to direct operations in Alberta, how many people are no longer being supported by direct operations? How many have left? I would like to know what the respite capacity is in direct operations. It's my understanding that some of the folks at Rosecrest or families supported through Rosecrest, not necessarily living there. I think a year ago, there were probably 50 families that relied on Rosecrest or Hardesty for essential residential respite for really, really medically complex children. So I would like to know, and adults actually, I'd like to know what the capacity is for respite. I would like to know how many people that are sort of PDD eligible or PDD funded currently reside at Alberta Hospital Edmonton, and how long on average they have resided there. I'm going to go on to the civil society grants. Now, I think it's really important to note that this has been, once this government's mandate is done, this will be about $20 million that has been taken away from community and social service budget, put into the Premier's Civil Society Fund to fund a number of things. We have seen precious little information, and I know it's because of reporting periods, but it'd be really nice to know when we can expect to see some results. So whether that's financial results, where was the money spent, What were the outcomes? How did it make life better for people in who receive social supports? So that is my question there. I'd also like to touch on, very briefly, the Premier's Council and status of persons with disabilities. Would like to know how many ministries in total were consulted, and on what particular piece of legislation were they consulted on. I would like to know what consultative process took place between the ministry and the Premier's Council and status of people with disabilities in preparation for this budget. I would also like to know, now I understand there have been some changes, some staffing changes at the Disability Advocates Office, which is great. I would like to know what the casework is like. So in last fiscal year, how many new people were assisted through the Disability Advocates Office? And can you tell me, are you able to group those new calls or new interactions in service sector, for lack of a better word, whether it was PDD, AISH, income support, FSCD, if you could sort of outline that for us. And then if you could also tell me, if the ministry could tell me, are there some targeted times for like a return phone call, or if, you know, that's often the best indicator of there's not enough staff working in the office if things get a little out of hand. And based on what my office is hearing, things are getting out of hand. So it'd be really helpful if the ministry could shed some light on what are some, I guess, acceptable turnaround times. And then, well, hang on one second. I'm wondering too if the ministry, I'm kind of all over the place, if you could tell me about the RFP that was done for the warming shelters for homeless supports. So the minister mentioned that he was able to, or that they were able to work quickly to get the money out. Where was the RFP? Thank you.
Thank you so much, Minister.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Boys, when we get to 5 minutes interview, it's easier to throw in questions. It's harder to get all the answers because you can hardly get answers within one line there. But I will do my utmost best. Perhaps after this round, we'll resume back to combined time so we can get to the question you wanted. Let me go back to 102 full-time equivalent position elimination. It was across all divisions. There's no specific one team that being or one functions being eliminated. Like I mentioned earlier, we took a thoughtful, careful approach through our.
Members, I'm a little difficulty hearing the minister. So if we could just have the conversation, maybe move outside the room. This is the minister's time.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm going to ask my deputy minister to give more specifics about how we achieved that 102 full-time position elimination.
So thank you, Cynthia Farmer, Deputy Minister. To meet our targets, we will be looking across the department. We will be looking at our attrition rate, which was approximately 4 to 5% in terms of staff leaving. We have a number of modernization tools that will be introduced shortly. One, as the minister has already talked about, is the AISH application process, and to which will be a lot friendlier for, we believe, Albertans. We've tested it with Boyle Macaulay, and we've tested it with some agencies just to ensure that that would help to lessen the load in terms of paperwork, but also that will help in the staffing component. We're also introducing in first quarter to second quarter an income support application form in terms that Albertans can do online. That will also help us in terms of paperwork and data entry. I'll be honest, member, and we've shared this with the minister, in terms of our systems, we really are having a full push ahead in terms of modernization tools and in trying to eliminate some of the work in terms of the repetitive work. So that's the way that we'll be approaching it, but we will also be approaching it in terms of we're looking at a client-centered, in terms of clients that are across different programs, so between two divisions, if there's some opportunities there. So that's our intent to deal with the staffing challenges.
Thank you, Deputy. Let me carry on before I run out of time. When you asked a question about respite during pandemic, that was on hold. So that one is we have no more services on that for the time being. Civil society grant, you're talking about wanting to have some outcomes in the end of the day, what has accomplished. Let me tell you, I'm sharing that aspiration with you. We will look forward to have aggregate. Each applicant receiving funding from us, they're obliged to have program report. With that, there are specific outcomes that are being required to what they will report to us. But we will, I can commit to you that we will look at the congregate data and to show what's the overall result will be for that one. Thank you very much. You also mentioned about Advocate's Office. Thank you for concurring with us by selecting a public process and getting the most suited person for the new job. We're very pleased with the new advocate and his personal lived experience plus his work as chair for Premier's Council on Persons with Disability is really shining through. Just to assure you that in addition to that, we're expanding offices. We are changing from currently only one office in Edmonton. If you look at the needs, the inquiries for caseload across the whole province. So we're having a Calgary office established parallel to what Edmonton have. So in that way, we're strengthening the capacity for that office to reach more people. You asked about total number of cases we've heard through that. I saw that number. Can you show me? Last year, we have a total of 3,531 concerns that was dealt with through this office. So that's a strong indication of great work down there. But before I run out of time, I do want to have an opportunity to say thank you to the first advocate, Tony, and he did a great job for the first time. By end of his term, somebody else had the chance. Isn't a statement of he didn't do a good job. He did what he was asked for.
Thank you, Minister. So if we could please move back to the government side for questions. Do I see Honourable Member Gottfried? Please proceed.
Great, thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you to the Minister. Thank you to the Minister as well for being with us today and all of his able staff as well. Minister, on page 23 of the government's fiscal plan, it outlines the Alberta at Work plan, which we've had an opportunity over the last few days to speak to several of your colleagues about as well. And that plan is to create pathways for all Albertans for greater participation in the province's economic recovery, which we're very grateful and blessed for, and with thanks to much of the good work of our government in making that possible as we move through this post-pandemic period. You know, it's clear to most people that the workforce challenges we face that in creating opportunities for all Albertans of all abilities to find gainful and fulfilling employment in this economic recovery is a real priority for all of us. And it's equally important, I think, that we're now facing, and a lot of the work that I've been doing across many sectors, that there are some workforce challenges we're facing in attracting people back to work. So that makes that even more important to us. So I'm looking for you to outline some of the ways that CSS is going to support vulnerable Albertans to better participate in that economic recovery. And I'll give an example of my wife's had a cousin, sadly passed away a number of years ago, but at one point in time, he was visually impaired, legally blind, but was working in a dark room in a hospital. Now, when that was digitized, he lost his job. Instead of us finding another opportunity to train or retrain him in the new technology, he then became then reliant on AISH after having a gainful employment and also having an opportunity. So this is a number of years ago, but those are the kinds of stories we have to make sure as we develop our economy that we create these opportunities and upgrades people's opportunities to participate, even though technology is moving ahead. So I've got a few questions that I'll ask. Number one is what are the changes that CSS clients can expect from the investment, from the commitments made in budget 2022? And maybe I'll go a little bit more specifically on how much funding is required to implement some of the changes that you've committed to and some of the enhancements and opportunities, and particularly around the Alberta at Work program, which again addresses all Albertans. But again, we need to make sure that we are ensuring a high level of participation of all Albertans. And I know that that's one of your personal goals and certainly one of this government. One of the other long-stated goals that we see from the government is to reduce red tape, and I know that we're well on our way to achieving that. But what specifically has your ministry done to address the issues of red tape? And I know that you've mentioned some concerns there in the past about the red tape being taken away, but also making sure that there's still accessibility for all of the CSS clients and those that you support. So I guess a little bit of an update on what the ministry is doing in terms of streamlining program delivery and increasing efficiencies while still making it easy or maybe even easier for Albertans to navigate a hopefully more user-friendly system. Also, I know that Service Alberta has been focused on across all the ministries making services digital by default by moving to increase the number of services online, ensuring that the access to those services is something that is not a barrier for people or not an impediment to their participation or to their utilization of some of those tools. So I guess I'm encouraged by that move and many of your ministries moves to streamline that, make it easier for clients. But I'm also concerned about those with challenges, experiencing challenges, or some difficulty in accessing online services. Could be due to disability. We had a CNIB in the legislature just a few days ago telling us about some of the challenges that their clients face in terms of technology, access to technology, and disability. So we want to make sure that that is not a barrier or impediment. And then we have the whole issue of the broadband internet, where we may have rural or remote clients who lack appropriate or stable internet access. So that's one of my other concerns. So I guess what I would like to hear from you is what your ministry is doing to ensure that they can manage the services, access the services, as we continue to modernize that system, while not creating any barriers for people who just maybe not tech savvy, again, lack that access to the internet, lack access to some of the technology that they need to participate, and that we still have options for them to pursue and to proceed and to access and to ensure that they have the ability to participate in society and in our economy as much as they possibly can. So those are probably a mouthful there. I know that trying to answer these questions in 5 minutes is tough, but I think I've got 10 seconds left, so I'll cede that back and seek your response, Mr. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Honourable Member. We'll turn it back over to the Minister.
Thank you, Honourable Member, through you, Madam Chair. Your passion to serve Albertans, your concerns about accessibility, your concerns about how we can make life easier for Albertans is well represented. And thank you. What an honor to be a colleague working side by side with you. So I'm going to quickly get on to the questions you raised here. Regarding the employment support services, how we're going to spend that money, 20 million of the 34 will be part of the Alberta at Work initiative. Honourable Member, you mentioned about your wife's story of her losing her previous job. It's a real issue that we recognize. In one hand, we have a booming economy. We have created so many new jobs, almost returned to pre-pandemic level. In another hand, we have people, like you just mentioned, have skills that is a mismatch from what the current needs are. That was one of the reasons why our government take specific commitments to establish this Alberta at Work initiative. It is by helping employers find employee and help you retrain and re-polish their skills so that they match with the new opportunities. The specific example you use about digitalization, I have a real case I want to share with you. I met with a fellow in Edmonton. He himself is IT guru, but his son is a person with a disability. Through trying to help his son, he created an opportunity for a number of other kids, youth under 25 years. And they started a digitalization of government legal documents service. And I met with them in person. What a inspiration when I see that. They are all on age, receiving age, but through this opportunity that they are able to earn additional $17,000 a year. And when I asked them, what does that mean to you in real life term, it is way beyond the money. They felt a sense of contribution, a sense of pride for themselves. And that is part of the reason that motivates us to
have this additional resource available to empower more people so that they can be successful like that. Part of the money will be also working in partnership with advanced education for micro credentials. As you know, honorable member, when you have the right training for those job-specific credentials there, your doors widely open. So we're fully participating in that part too. I look forward to work with nonprofit organizations. I met quite a few of them in this regard. They're excited that our government opened the door for them. They are absolutely ready to play and to create those job-specific opportunities for training, to assistance for assistance to our vulnerable Albertans to get their chance to get a job that is meaningful to them. You mentioned about accessibility concerns when we talk about digitalization. Thank you for doing that. As a social worker myself, I am fully aware for the client that we support. Many of them have mobility challenges, others have language and other disabilities. It is difficult in many ways that we can assume what the perhaps capable ordinary Albertans can take advantage of the technology offers as compared to what they will do. But this speaks to why the supportive services is critical, and this speaks to the increased funding of $60 million we added for support services for people with disability and FSAD. So granted, all our existing support services will be part of the parade on top of that top-up of $24 million employment targeted funding there. So when we lump them all together, you're talking about $1.4 billion just for people with disability there. So I'm confident that your concerns of make sure that for those who are buried and have challenges to access modernized digital tools, that we do have in-person support there for them. Let me see if I missed anything. Yes, you mentioned about red tape reduction. Thank you for saying that. Can you imagine?
Minister. Now we'll turn the time back over to the official opposition. Please proceed.
I'm just going to, again, circle back and ask the same questions that I've asked that have not been answered. It would really be helpful if the minister would just answer the questions. So I'm just trying to clarify. The minister made a statement earlier that there was no wait list for family supports for children with disabilities. I would like some clarity. I have also asked, this third time I'm asking, on page 169, complex needs residential build PDD clients is $20 million over 3 years. I have asked a series of questions. Who is the builder? Who is the service provider? Where is it? What is the capacity? I also asked about the workplace assessment models that were done around caseload and the fact that most of the regions were in the red zone. I would like to know what the ministry is going to do about that. I also asked earlier, and perhaps the minister misunderstood my question, I asked about if there would be an increase for disability workers or if there was consideration or discussion, not the wages that are paid to people with disabilities, but the workers that support people with disabilities. So maybe there wasn't clarity there. Finally, I would also like to know the number of people that received PDD supports that died during COVID. And so I have tried to find this information a number of different ways. I know that the information is recorded, as I was a service provider at one time and did have to record, sadly, when there were deaths. So I would like to know how many people that were funded by PDD died during COVID. And I would also like to know, I have increasingly heard from people all around Alberta, and so I was happy to hear your work around making processes more efficient, but I have heard that people are experiencing really long wait times to get a call back for income support related issues, less so for AISH, more for income support. So we've heard as long as 12 days, 12 business days to get a call back. So I would like to know what is an appropriate time for callback. The other thing that I really wanted to know about, going back to the service dogs, I'm going to ask this question again. So the minister noted that they are forecasting 55 new dogs. How many of those dogs from the approved list came from providers that charge for their dogs, charge between $25,000 and $45,000? How many of those dogs? Also, within the CSS budget, I didn't see it pulled out in any of the documents. What is the total budget amount? What are the total FTEs for delivery there? So if that, hang on, there's just one other question that I wanted to ask. Okay, I'm going to let you answer. I'm going to give you the time to answer.
Thank you very much. Let me get down to your questions. Capital plan, through you, of course. Through the capital plan, we have $8 million in 2021 to 22 for that complex needs you talk about. It's partially rentals with Michelin Center, but the other part is expanding the capacity in graduation support, which is direct operation in Calgary there. So that's where that is. And through working with infrastructure, we're doing a open public call for proposal in terms of all the process of who the bidder, who will be awarded to. So stay tuned as that process unfolds. It's a public process. I can give my ADM Clay a further opportunity to address further questions there.
Thank you, Minister. Madam Chair, so budget 2021 actually approved $28.7 million in capital investments to build a community-based residence with 24 units to serve complex needs PDD clients. Currently, infrastructure, and that's an infrastructure's budget. So currently, infrastructure is doing a functional program review. So they're going to be going out and they're going to talk to stakeholders and others to try to define and develop what the design of that facility should look like. And so they have a consultant hired, and they'll be going out and doing that engagement immediately. So they're at that stage. We will be doing an engagement session as well. The minister will be engaging with stakeholders and service providers to look at the governance model for the facility, to look at the delivery model for the facility as well. That should take place this coming spring. So early days on the facility, on the build, and I just want to reinforce that the minister really wants to engage both individuals and service providers in the provision of this services for this facility. Thank you.
And thank you. Thank you, Clay. And can you also answer the other question in terms of the qualified service dogs? And how many new are coming? Thank you.
With the service dogs, I think the question was that what's the how many of those dogs produced were from for-profit, not-for-profit? Unfortunately, I don't have the breakdown. I just have the total figure with me today between.
Get a later date, that'd be great.
Okay. We'll honor you that.
So if I could just grab a little bit more of my time, since we seem to be going back and forth. I just, I appreciate the information about, the process for creating the PDD build. I just wanted a sense from the officials and perhaps the minister as well. I guess anytime we talk about institutions, and that's what I think of this as, and I'm not saying that's a bad thing, I'm just saying it's institutional. I would just like to hear from the minister or the ministry or both about their commitment to community living.
I'm happy to answer that question. All the member, you're a social worker, so
No, I'm not.
You're not. Okay, I thought you were.
No.
Okay, we've seen in our history there are days that we swing the services all into what I call institutionalized support services, and there are days that everything is community based. So I'm happy to share with you my observation, our current practice with this ministry, and I'm committed for that, is a balanced approach. So we will make sure that we enable community and families to do as much as possible for that community-based support. I mentioned earlier to you about how much when I meet with families, when I see their motivation to work with us for family-managed FSCD program, I can see so much added benefits and leverage to what otherwise an institution could do. But on the flip side, when I'm visiting the high complex needs, when we're talking about having challenges, even maintain their own safety, and oftentimes put caregivers at risk too. We're talking about a very specialized group of services that we need to support. That is in the institutionalized approach. So that's one of the reasons I am supportive of this expansion of capital plan to expand the graduation program in Calgary, that part, in part to show that we're not just one way to swing without any balance there. So I hope that give you enough confidence. That,
did you say, I missed that part, I couldn't hear. So you're okay, you're happy about the expansion of Michener and graduated supports?
yeah, so what I'm saying is I'm happy that we have a balanced approach. In one hand, when you talk about the remaining part of the 3.9 billion budget and 1.4 billion in the age and disability sectors there, by and large, the community-based support take a significant amount of portion there. But we're not forgetting this other specialized area there too. So it's a balanced approach is what I'm saying.
So I'm guessing the zero intake at Michener is gone? Is that correct? Is still in place?
There's no target like that. We're providing the current services that Michener Center is providing.
Yes, oh
there.
no, I'm aware, thank you.
Yeah.
So I'm just asking about the intake policy, like new
There's
people?
there's no new intake there. We're
Excellent.
serving the existing clients until the time is ready.
Yes, for sure.
I have a deputy have more to share with you. Go ahead.
So thank you, Chair, for the question, and through you, Chair. For the graduated supports renovations that we're speaking about 2 vacant bungalows that were part of the graduated supports. We're doing some renovations right now, and we're looking for a contractor to actually, as far as provide the services in graduated supports. So it's not in the graduated supports proper facility, but the individuals that would be moving into that facility are individuals that have been stranded in hospital care.
Yeah.
So they're individuals that are currently taking hospital beds for a very long period of time, and this is actually a transition for them to move into the community. So I just wanted to provide that clarity, Minister.
Thank you.
And to also say that none of our facilities, none of our direct ops are actually we're not doing any admissions across the board.
Excellent, thank you. I appreciate that.
Thank you, Deputy. Through you, Honorable Chair, I hope we answered that question. And how much more time we have left?
You have 54 seconds.
Oh, I'm going to yield that time to opposition if you want to have one more question.
Sure, I can always ask more questions. So maybe back to my first question. What's it going to take to re-indexation income support?
What's that? Say it again.
What will it take for your government to re-index income support?
Well, that question has answered
No,
so
it
many
wasn't.
times, so I'm not going to wasting
Wasn't
our time
answered.
to. Well, I will repeat again, we're committed for providing high-quality service there. We're proud the current benefit that we're providing is the highest in the country. We're working hard to balance our book. When we have more money into our
More money?
revenue, and of course, the doors will be open that we can increase more in health, social services, and education, and so on and forth. So, you know what? I am so pleased. I'm part of a government that demonstrated not only we have the discipline,
Thank you, Minister.
but we
And the remaining time will go back over to the government side. Please proceed, Honourable Member.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and through you to the Minister. I just want, go ahead.
And I share because I find it's hard when only 5 minutes. We'll just share the time. So
Yes,
you ask
betcha.
questions, I'll respond.
I actually really have, I had a few, but I don't think we have time, Minister. So I just want to ask you the one question. On page 57, you've got your financial statements. There's a revenue line there that basically says services on First Nations reserves almost $53 million. Now, my question is that when I just want to make sure that we're actually getting our fair share from the federal government in terms of these transfer payments. So is when the ministry receives or a request for services, whether it be AISH, income support, anything in regards to First Nations, is that then cataloged and then billed back to the federal government in order for us to be able to make sure that we're As that is actually a federal response and federal responsibility. So are we getting our full share?
Absolutely.
Does 52.6 million cover that full amount?
No, we're not. But I want to congratulate you for asking such a critical, very important question. To my shock, I've learned once I'm in this role, we all understand social services function as a mandate when the service provided on reserve. It's federal government mandate. But for the sake of taking care of our burdens, we provided PDD services and FSAD services to people no matter where you are, including on the reserves. Then what I discovered was with PDDs were able to get the equivalent reimbursement from federal counterpart, and only on emergency basis.
PDD.
Yeah, and for FSCDs, we're not. So it's a question that Minister Wilson and I partnered together. We are writing letters, lobbying on behalf of our burdens to keep our federal counterpart account. That you cannot say, well, it's your mandate, we're doing the service. You only reimburse us a portion of it, not the other piece. There's no such good rationale. They recognize this is an issue, and we've convened some interactions, meetings, correspondence back and forth. But I look forward to stay on top of that, work with Minister Wilson that we need to ask our fair share there. Otherwise, it's unfair to our burdens. So thank you for asking that great question.
Sure. And Minister, do you know what that deficiency is? So are we $100 million out? Are we $200 million out? Where are we at in terms of services provided?
There's no deficiency. Can I?
Yeah, I'll have my ADM Clay answer that question.
Thank you, Minister, Madam Chair. Just to provide some clarity, there's no gap in the services that we provide and not getting reimbursed from the feds. The problem right now is that with PDD, we don't fund it on reserve, only under emergency situations, which we do get reimbursed for if the band asks us to provide that service on reserve. The big problem with the federal government is that they don't fund us for PDD services on reserve, and the correspondence that the minister is referring to in writing to the federal minister, himself and Minister Wilson, was to encourage the federal government to reimburse us so that we can go on reserve and provide PDD services on reserve. For FSCD services, we do provide FSCD services on reserve, and we'll continue to do that. We made a big push this year to actually provide awareness on the FSCD on reserve throughout Alberta. Thank you. Can I have Madam Chair, is that okay if I just have a clarifying comment? Clay, can you just, the minister just said that FSCD, is that the acronym? Yeah. Was not being fully funded by the federal government. Is that correct, Clay? We do get that totally reimbursed. So PDD is not just if it's emergency? That's correct. And then, but the other is fully funded? FSCD is fully funded. PDD is reimbursed if it's an emergency situation. Okay. And so what is the deficiency number? I don't have the deficiency number with us today. Could that be provided so that we can understand where the deficiency is with the federal government? Honourable member, I can pledge to you, yes, we will get that number to you. Sure, thank you so much. I just really quickly here, 17 seconds left, but domestic violence, obviously with COVID, we've seen spikes. I hope that the ministry, I know the ministry is taking this very seriously. I've talked to the minister many times about this, but just making sure that our children are taken care of.
I apologize for the interruption, but I must advise the committee that the first portion of time allotted for consideration of the ministry's estimates has concluded. I'd like to remind committee members that we are scheduled to meet on Monday, March 14th, 2022 at 7 p.m. to consider the estimates of the Ministry of Seniors and Housing. Thank you, everyone. This meeting is adjourned.